What up, what up, what up? What up? Facebook, YouTube, Chad and Greg here. Welcome to Shifting Lanes Garage.
Hello.
My name's Chad. With me, as always, is Greg. One of these days, we're going to time it up to where I'm going to have someone else's hand just go through the screen and like slap you.
Just do like the old school high five from Scrubs. Just boop.
Anywho, Steve, Anthony, what's going on, fellas? Welcome to the stream. How's everybody doing tonight?
Well, I'm good. Today was crazy because lots to do. My boss is out.
Fun.
And we had a kindergarten social that we sort of hosted. It was supposed to be at our house, but then we relocated to a park because F that noise. And yeah, my oldest starts kindergarten on Wednesday, so that's weird.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's gonna be an eventful week.
The joys of being a father.
Yes.
We have Nicholas in chat. What's going on, buddy? Saw you got a new ride. Congratulations.
Yes, congrats as well. Very nice. We can talk about that tonight. Well, I missed what the ride was. What is the ride? I saw it was posted, but I didn't see the picture.
It is a Legacy Touring XT, it looks like.
Ooh.
With
That's actually quite nice. Look at that interior, tan interior. Very nice.
So everyone else.
Full support on the upgrade. Great job. Look at that.
Look at that badging.
Look at that badging. There it is.
Very nice interior.
Oh, man.
One
Very
might be
nice.
mistaken for thinking that's not a Subaru interior. That's how nice it
Yeah,
is.
I was gonna say that actually looks like a way more upscale interior than it rightfully should be.
I think we need
Like
Sorry, long day.
we need some coffee instead of juice tonight.
Yeah, fresh out of Red Bull. So
How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing fine. I got on the books to get the Mustang up to blue sky, so she can be looked at, get a few things taken care of. Mainly figure out why we're down on power. Hopefully it's nothing mechanical and it's just like the car read, wait a minute, there's no the catalytic converters don't appear to be attached to anything. So then it went into like an uber safe mode.
Nice.
But also we're gonna have some hood clearancing up with the guys at Blue Sky. So hopefully Mustang comes back and is a beacon of boosted V8 health.
A beacon.
Yes. But yeah, like just want to get I just kind of want to get that thing up and running. I've had a couple people like, what do you mean it's down? Like, you're driving it. I'm like, yes. I just don't drive it above 3,000 RPM at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you got to do what you got to do to make sure that, it doesn't explode.
Right. Because as much as I'd like to put a better, like a crate motor or a better version of the Coyote in there, I don't have the finances for that right now.
Yeah, exactly. Nor would you if you blew up your motor and then sold off all the componentry. You might be able to afford the motor part of it, but not the install. So,
right, there'd be a lot of slave labor up at Blue Sky to pay for the for the labor costs.
We would be consulting for them and making many a video for them for a long time.
Yeah, we'd be their production studio.
Pretty much. For free for a couple of years.
That does bring up an interesting question.
How much are crate motors?
Oh, I've already looked that up.
Oh, okay.
There's actually, I think if memory serves, there's 4.
Yeah, well, Chad's looking up what he's looking up. Um, Nicholas, is that what kind of transmission does that Legacy have? Because I have a bad feeling it's gonna be the wrong kind. Probably CVT, I would imagine.
Uh, crate engines. Ford Racing. Oh, that's the control pack. A Gen 3 Coyote is 10 grand.
Okay.
Uh, and the Illuminator is 14 grand. There's a, I think it's, hold on, I gotta find this.
Enhanced.
Because, like,
Enhanced.
we found, like,
Enhanced.
but, while we're talking of coyotes, anybody happen to take a gander and see what brilliant 1500 plus crate horsepower capable crate motor Cletus just purchased?
No.
It's a coyote.
Oh, there you go. I was gonna say,
Um,
I'm not sure, but it's probably gonna be Coyote.
let's see here. There we
Nice.
go. Short blocked.
Okay. Only comes with a CVT, 2.4 liter turbo, top model. Excuse me, we're both
Mm-hmm.
tired. Does not come with a 6 speed, and no one makes a 6 speed anymore. In any of their stuff, only like some of the enthusiast things and some base models for some other stuff. But yeah, that's a bummer. But hey, look, it's a nice car, really nice interior, and 2.4 liter turbo. Can't really go wrong there.
Oh, man.
It's a good Subi. Legacies are good Subis.
So if I just wanted a 5 liter short block capable of
Mhm.
1200 horsepower, 7100 with Hell Horse.
Okay, that's actually not as that's less than I thought it would be.
Right, that's just like the short block and stuff like that. If I wanted to upgrade to a
Sure.
5.2 liter, um,
So GTD block.
yes, we'll call it that. But capable of almost double the GTD's horsepower.
Well, right, because the GTD is a race car, not a power car.
The GTD is using an updated version of the Predator. It's not using
I
the
know, I know,
5.4 liter race
I
engine.
know, I know.
Oh, if I could just reach through the internet and slap you.
Ah,
No, if I wanted to do that, the short block for 1400 horsepower is 13 grand. The long block is 20 grand. And I'm
oh,
assuming you'd
wow.
want to
Okay.
put voodoo heads and stuff on it
Yeah.
and everything. Um, rotating assemblies? I've gone down a rabbit hole, sorry.
Come back, come back. We have something fun to talk about.
Son of a bitch. Sorry. I just want to look at one more thing. Engine components. Who in their right mind is spending $700 on a Ford Racing EcoBoost cylinder head? I just
Nobody should be doing that.
inquiring minds need to know. Can I just?
Yeah. Nobody in their right mind should be doing that.
Huh. All right, I can't find a rotating assembly. Bummer. Because that's likely what would end
Yeah,
up happening.
it's all good.
It would just be a worst case, find a rotating assembly and be like, "Listen, Jeff, how about that free labor?" You're welcome, Steve. Yeah, I have this crate. With the way, like, when I get congested, I don't know if you can hear it in my voice, but I can hear it in my voice. When I get congested, I start yawning.
Yeah.
But apparently, Nicholas's car is loaded, and if it's comfortable, what you wanted, drives right, and is reliable. There. We have to grow up at some point. I'll let you know when it happens for me.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's not. It's not. We neither of us will ever grow up. So
Speak for yourself as an automatic wagon that he lugs his two children around and just had a kindergarten meet and greet.
I mean, just because I have those things does not mean that I've grown up.
I mean, two more than I have.
Eh, I mean, maybe maybe only in optics. Up here, we're the same person. Right up in this region, and the brainial cavity, it's the same. Ooh, so interesting thing I just literally just found because usually we do this before the stream to for you guys to like talk about different topics or whatever. But um something I just read. So I'm looking through different things to like talk about with you guys. Uh and we all know that the Charger is kind of like going the way of the dinosaur. But that's only for the ICE version. But maybe not, because apparently, according to a report, the next Dodge Charger will have a twin turbo i6, which I can only imagine is going to be the Hurricane. Um, and the Daytona trim will be EV only. So it won't be a full EV thing. Um, this is from Motor One. It was posted today. Yep, today at 5:45. So this is like literally brand new news as of a couple hours ago. Um, I'm trying to just read through it. Not just a pun aimed at the silent. Dutch has been laser focused on the present. Blah blah blah. For the record, a Dodge spokesperson confirmed to Motor One in an email on July 2022 that the combustion power in the next generation Charger was over. Specifically, the quote was, "The Hemi in that platform, as well as that platform, are going away. The next generation will be BEV." That was before the debut of the Dodge Charger Daytona SRT EV concept, not to mention the next generation Ford Mustang and its complete lack of electrification. Then came the Chevy Camaro's cancellation, and most recently the 800 horsepower supercharged Mustang GTD. In short, much has happened since we chatted with Dodge about the Charger's future. Most recent issue from Mopar Insiders caught our attention because it draws a clear line between the next generation Dodge Charger and the Charger Daytona. So they're saying top trim could be a twin charged 3-liter inline six, which is actually currently available in the Jeep Grand Wagoneer, and rumored to be under hood of the refreshed Ram pickup, makes 510 horsepower, more than all current gen Charger trims, save for the Hellcat family. So interesting report, because that would then confirm that there is a potential for a V8 because they are keeping ICE. And it also could mean that there could be a really crazy version, because we all know Dodge, of the Hurricane motor, because we heard that the Hurricane motor is going to have like an 1100 horsepower crate motor version of it. So, I mean, that's actually pretty good news if that's a confirmed. Now, it's not a confirmed report, but if that turns out to be true, I'm very much okay with that. And Steve, thank you very much for the contribution. Good sir, 355 stars. That is what I will say the amount of horsepower my car has now. So thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Couple things here. One,
Yeah, thoughts.
first of all, it's just they call the Daytona, which is a racetrack, which most famously hosts NASCAR,
Yeah.
is the electric version. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, look.
Okay.
Car makers don't really care about name heritage anymore, and I think
Listen,
that
the
died
Pontiac
a
Le
long time
Mans raced at Le Mans. No, it didn't. But at any rate,
ago. I was gonna say, wait a second.
here's the
The
thing.
Ford Taurus is not a bull.
Nor are any of the Lamborghinis that are named after bulls.
Correct. Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing. While that's all well and good, and I guess it's a case for the i6, i.e., hey, we made this thing. We should probably start putting it in things that aren't $100,000. Um,
Right. Yeah. Hashtag Wagoneer.
and I think it was Antoine who says, "But will it have a manual?" That matters. I think it matters an absolute shit ton.
Yeah.
It just it's confusing. Uh, because like if you could put, let me put it to you this way, right? The Dodge V8s are very similar to the Chevy V8s in that they are push rods, which means
Yep.
they have a very narrow footprint, which is why most people enjoy using them for swaps. Um,
Right.
I kind of dig the idea of a 500 horsepower straight six, but I don't think a Charger should just be, yeah, it's like, you know what I mean? Like I shouldn't.
Well, then it's
I sh-
basically just an American Alpha Quadrifoglio at that point, because that has a straight six and with 500 horsepower. So now
I
you're kind
mean,
of
yeah.
getting into that territory, if you will.
Wait, no, it doesn't.
The Alpha Quadrifoglio is 505 horsepower.
Yes, it's a V6.
Oh, it's a V6? I thought it was a straight
No,
six.
it's a V6. It has a hot turbo
Oh,
setup,
okay.
and it's pretty much the Ferrari California's engine with two cylinders lopped off.
That's right. That's right. Not a straight. It's a V. You're right. My
I
fault.
think Mercedes
But
is
either way,
doing something very similar with a lot of their
yes.
peak. The V8's kind of look at this shiny new engine we have.
Right. Because they have the straight six, but it's sort of like the lesser AMGs, right? It's the at least right now, because I know the four banger exists.
Hmm.
And then they're going like with the hybridization and stuff. But I think it was like the C43 has the straight six with like 400 and something horsepower to it. So I mean, it's they're not that far off. I want to say it has like 425, 450 or something.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing though, right? Like that's great. Like, hey, we're not going fully electric. Psych, fooled you. Haha, everybody relax. The V8 is gone, by the way. Like,
Yeah, I was gonna say
like,
like Anthony said so much for those last call editions. Like I mean those probably will still be the last call editions for the V8. I don't know. We'll have to see.
um, Anthony, nobody's ever gonna fight you on that, ever.
Yeah, no, straight six is always better than
If
V6.
you
It's
believe
just a better
V6s
engine.
are better than straight sixes, please raise your hand and let Anthony, not myself or Greg, tell you why you're wrong. But here's the thing of it. Like, it had this is go. All right. So, like I said in the first part, this is like, hey, we have this new engine. We should probably start putting it in stuff. Otherwise, people are gonna
Right.
like, good job, guys. We don't care. But it also screams like an excuse to charge more. And what I mean by that is like
Yeah.
it's a newer, more modern engine, which even though it has two less cylinders, it's dual overhead cam. I think it's twin turbo. Uh, it has modern. It's a modern design, right? Whereas, in all honesty, probably the cheaper route would have been to just drop a Hemi into it. And I'm not saying that from the enthusiast side of it. I'm saying it from the like, you know. But I mean, who knows? I
Right.
mean, I guess like to Anthony's point about the last calls, they could be. They don't want to. This thing may very well at some point end up with a V8 under the hood. V8 and hybridized, or I have no idea, right? But there's absolutely no way on God's green earth that they're going to announce anything having to do with a V8 in any shape or form while they're still trying to sell these last call editions. There's no
Oh, for sure.
shot. So,
Yeah. Also, while all of these companies, Dodge included, are making this big EV push because they want to sell the cars that they've made. So, if they want to sell EVs, getting a big V8 in the lineup is not really going to do that. So,
no, but even, I mean, so like,
I don't see it happening.
I, I don't know. It's just like, I don't think we should be excited that, and how do I phrase this correctly? Like, I don't want to say we shouldn't be excited that internal combustion uh, finds a way to kind of bring the Jurassic Park quote in there. Life finds a way. Uh, but I also don't think that, like, I really don't think that it's that exciting of news, because it's like, okay, like if you've read the tea leaves of our electric future, every year everybody's like, yeah, about that. It's
Yeah.
coming. It's coming. It's coming. Look at all our wonderful marketing material. Yeah. Okay, we're plateauing. Um, hey, look at this smaller than you wanted internal combustion engine. Like, I don't think we should be excited for that as enthusiasts, right? Like,
Right.
don't get me wrong. The Daytona that's all electric, that's performance oriented, that thing's going to be a rocket ship. It's going to be a hoot. It's just stop. Like, it's like, to me, it's to anyone who might be old enough to remember this, it just stinks of new Coke, right? If you're old enough to remember when Coke came out with a brand new recipe, and it was new Coke, and it was better, and they sold you on this bill of goods, and then it was like, oh right, people don't actually like that. Hey, old Coke is
Yeah.
back. Like, like they literally just gave you what you liked prior, changed nothing. I, I, and this isn't even that. This is like, okay, you get new Coke, but the Diet Coke is back to the old formula. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, okay, it's
Yeah.
like, sure, thanks, I guess. Um, I don't know. Look, let me
Totally.
put it to you this way: like,
I
I
mean,
am a fan
I agree.
of a straight six engine. I think they sound phenomenal when done right. They're capable, obviously capable of a lot of power, just because of inherently the design of them. It's just like, I don't know, man. Like, only way it saves face for me is if it does come with a manual box. If it's just some eight
Yeah.
speed automatic, it's just, man, we're seeing it everywhere, right? Like Mazda, Dodge, Mercedes. I forget who else, but we're seeing the straight six come back. And why is that? It's because it's a more efficient design than a V6. Uh, in
Yeah.
that it's just inherently balanced. So when it's more balanced, less energy is wasted on spinning things like balanced shafts. Less energy is wasted in inefficiency of design. So for the same amount of potential energy and a drop of fuel, you're getting more out the back. Like, that's kind of,
Yeah.
as an upshot to that, they can make really good power. But and I've said this before on stream, efficiency works in both directions. So a lot of times, what's good for efficiency is really good for horsepower. Like direct injection, great for efficiency, can really make good power. Uh, you know, turbos, you can get decent efficiency out of them, and they make power. Like a lot, like it's sort of, to make an engine more efficient is to make it more powerful and then detune it, right? So
Right.
is so look, am I happy that it's not all electric? Yes. Am I excited? Not really. Um,
Yeah.
like I
And
said,
interestingly enough, I now cannot find that article anymore.
huh, I have it up.
I wonder if they were told to take that down
I don't know. Let's see. Try.
because it's actually true.
Well, that would be
At
the
least it's
second
not on
time.
my news app anymore.
I don't know. I DM'd it to you, so let me know if that worked.
Oh, okay, there it is. Yeah, it's just not on Feedly anymore. Strange. Well, either way, it's there. But yeah, interesting. Very interesting to see if that is actually true. I still think that these companies are going to make V8s eventually again because I really don't see them all going EV. It's the same thing with like, and this is not a political thing, but the whole Obama administration, we were sort of moving towards this EV thing and the cafe restrictions, right? So like by like 2025, everyone had to adhere to like 25 mpg fleet wide rate, right? And then it got moved back to 2028, and then like the Trump administration came in and like negated a lot of it, and then Biden's come in and says now we need EVs and blah blah blah, and all these companies are going like EV. So like it really cycles a lot with like the political cycle a little bit, and I don't want to get political about it, but like that's who makes the regulations is the government. So the OEMs are sort of just kind of reacting to in real time what these different administrations are saying. And like I foresee the V8 to still continue to live on, even if it's not with these companies. But I still even with from a boutique standpoint, you're gonna have shops like our buddies at Blue Sky. They're gonna be able to do V8s and continue to make them for many decades to come. And there's enough fuel to do that for many more decades after that, many hundreds of years, because of drilling and how efficient it's become and how good they've become at finding reserves and stuff like that. So Chad's like Chad's getting all beefed up because Anthony's cat apparently just attacked him on screen.
No, I was drilling. Here's the thing.
Oh, drilling. Oh,
just to piggyback off your political thing, and I think Nicholas in chat said something about it and things like that.
Yep.
I am not on board with just government, and I'm just going to sound like a rant, like, I am not on board with government. I'm going out to my shack in the woods. I'm a prepper. I have many.
Where's Doug? Doug needs to be on stream for this conversation.
But I'm not on board. I'm not on board with this. Something as huge as our automotive future being decided by people who don't have a clue, and whose motivation for and I understand this is politics 101, but whose sole motivation is not the betterment of the planet, for example, or the end consumer, or any of that other nonsense. It's just let me placate whatever particular party I happen to be a part of, so I get more votes. And I understand that's been politics since the dawn of time. I totally understand that. But for there are too many instances in, I don't mean to paint such a wide brush, but like in government, where the people making the decisions and making the laws have no freaking clue on the subject matter. I could go really deep into this rant, and I'm not going to, but if we're going to sit here and have regulations on miles per gallon, regulations on things like electric cars and what percentage needs to be, what percentage of a fleet offered to the consumer needs to be electric and things like that. Well, then you know what? People from those auto manufacturers who, yes, are going to be self-serving as well. People who deal with the power grid, so your power companies and things of that nature. You're going to need people who deal with infrastructure, so your local, you're on even like a township level, these people who have to, like all of this stuff, those people have to sit down in a room and say, okay, here, because I cannot trust someone who looks at what's going on in California with, I forget what their percentage of electric car adaptation is, but let's say it's the national average around 11 or 14. And their grid can't handle it. Electric cars stop there. I'm sorry. They just stop right there. And I don't care who's in power or what have you, but it's all well and good. And again, my mind went way down a rabbit hole on this, and I won't take you to that place, guys. But it's like, it's like, oh yeah, we see that 2035, do it. But the people won't be able to drive. I could give a fuck. I'm trying to get reelected this year, and then 4 years from now, or 2 years, or 6 years, depending on what office you have. Like, there needs to be and this goes for everything, not just automotive. Like a lot of this stuff, energy as a whole, right? Like, you need to have people who actually are experts in the subject matter directing the individuals who actually sign this stuff into law. And until that happens, none of this stuff makes anything. Because what do we see every year? Every time the political winds shift, right? Republicans have power, it goes this way. Democrats have power, it goes this way. And it continues to swing, and the first half of their tenure is just undoing the most unpopular things the previous regime did, which serves
Right.
nobody except for the people in
Correct.
power.
So here's what I think on that whole thing, and to kind of continue what you're saying. So I'm very much for regulation as long as it's done intelligently, which I think is what you're saying. Like, if there's all of these people in government that have no idea how cars work or what cars do or how efficient they are and yada, 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 they're just throwing a piece of paper saying, here's how bad a V8 is, here's how good an EV is. My constituents are going to say, "Oh, well, I want EVs," and I'm a person from California. Well, of course, I'm going to be like, "EV, yes, give me votes." So I'm very much for regulation as long as it's smart and makes sense. But the way that they're doing it is just stupid. It has to be EVs by 2035. Like, there isn't a snowball's chance in hell that we are going to get even close to what they are asking for by 2035. Because if you only look at used cars that people own and how long they last these days, there is no way those people that have a 2015 or 2010 car that's working perfectly and it's going to continue to work fairly decently over the next decade, they're not going to trade that in for an EV. They're going to trade it in for another used car that's going to last them another 100, 200,000 miles.
Well, and not
And
for nothing, the most efficient thing you can do is to keep the car you currently have going.
Right. And you keep it on the road. And because that car doesn't have to be built again or bought again or sold
The
again
materials
or whatever.
have already
So,
been dug out of the earth, refined,
correct.
processed, all of
So
that.
keep it on the road. That's the most important thing you can humanly do for your car. The other side of that is like what I think we should do is if you are going to have government intervention, which is just it's going to happen. We can't change that. That is not a thing we can change because at this point in human history, government intervention in automotive is going to be a thing. Period, bar none. What we should do is say, okay, your fleet needs to be 25% EV. Cool. That is absolutely a number that people can hit. And that is absolutely a number that most of these car companies can sell. Because 25% of a fleet being EV, emissions totally out of the question, whatever, digging out the materials in the earth, non-emissions during use, whatever. If you really want to have that sort of optics with people in the public, then do it that way. It's a realistic goal, and it still reduces carbon emissions from cars being on the road, which seems to be the biggest nexus point for this whole discussion, is do it that way, because then you're not foisting these unrealistic expectations on car companies, nor are you trying to foist an opinion on someone that makes absolutely no sense to 99% of car consumers that are like, well, I can't afford an EV, or I don't really believe in them. I don't have the infrastructure for it. We don't have the infrastructure for it, yada, yada, yada. So like, just make a percentage of fleet that way, because that way it's an easy goal to hit. We can get data from it, and then science, we make an educated decision on it. Like it's just an easy way to do it. But
Right.
it'll never happen, but that's just an easier way to make things work.
My whole thing is this, right? Like, you're going to tell a private industry that they have to have X amount of their thing be a certain way by law. Fine. I get it, right? Like,
Right.
there's a reason, like, the actual moonshine isn't sold in liquor stores, right? Like, I get it. But the thing of it is you, me, everybody watching here, we pay taxes every year on the money we make. And infrastructure is the thing that's realistically holding this back. So the ball is not in the manufacturer's court. It is in public works. It's in their hands. It's in the federal, state, what have you, the people in charge of keeping your roads, the people in charge of, mandating where your power and everything comes from, and maintaining it so that the power companies can keep it together. Most of those, it was New Jersey Power and Light for forever, right? Like, it's the easy way out to say, yeah, you deal with it. Like,
Yeah.
because not for nothing, 25% might be a great target. It seems reasonable. One of every 4 cars spit out is electric. Seems obtainable. But that goes back to, you need someone who understands the fucking power grid in on that conversation.
Well, right.
Because 25% might work where we live, but absolutely decimate the power grid in New York City. It might work where we live.
We have someone. It's called the Secretary of Energy. The problem is they're the Secretary of Energy for the entire United States and not for individualized power grids.
I understand. And
that's the other thing.
Kind of what I'm trying to say is number one,
right.
That cannot fall on one person or one person's
Right.
self-appointed commission. It cannot fall upon that. You have to have, and this is a shocking idea, I know, representatives from different parts of the country to tell you, hey, it's different here in Arizona than it is in Maine. It's a wild idea. I get it.
Wait, where have I heard this idea before? Oh, wait!
It's
the entire U.S.
It's supposed to be
House
Congress.
of Representatives. Yeah, doesn't that exist already?
And...
Wait, but then let's also make something else with 2 representatives from every state. That makes it a little bit more.
A check and or a balance, if you were. That's the thing. It's like, and again, this is a broader spectrum on the whole, and I don't mean to be as naive as to think that this is a modern problem for our generation. It's been going on for... When was the first election? I'll show you someone who was pandering to get votes. But it shouldn't be a talking point for a debate. It should be, let's get down, let's iron this out. Again, we are a democracy. The people. I'm pretty sure "we the people" is the first sentence in something important in our country.
I don't know. I haven't heard about that. That sounds like communism. I don't know.
The People's Republic. Oh shit. But no, I mean, and I'm definitely don't want to go that direction.
It's like
not even
like
motive, but
reel, it's like that reel where a guy's working on a car with a hammer, and there's just a sickle sitting next to him on the table, and he like puts it down for a second, and then it just like da 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 da, like just starts playing, and he picks up the hammer real quick, and like, oh shit, didn't mean for that to happen.
But it's one of those things where,
great.
let me put it to you this way. I understand that we come on here every week and we talk about how automotive enthusiasm is dying. The simple fact of the matter is, though, I don't know the exact automotive density, right? Like how many cars per individual there are in a country.
Sure.
But the overwhelming majority of people need a car. Especially if you live in places like we do. Public transportation just ain't it. And not for nothing, it's, in my opinion, a God-given right to be self-mobile. So if I want to get out of my house and go wherever, I can. Again, that's part of the rabbit hole. Like I'm like up against it, and I don't really want to go much further than that. But the bottom line is that if they're going to sit here and make these regulations, it has to be done from a place of actual science, actual intelligence, done by people with expertise in the actual fields that we are discussing, as opposed to people who are like, well, all right, well, this report says that the average car kills 73,000 chipmunks a year. It is bad, it is evil, and it should be abolished. I'm going to go with that. As opposed to this report over here that paints a slightly rosier picture for internal combustion, right? Like that was the one thing, right? Like when I took advanced statistics in college, one of the things my professor said, don't forget, class, you can use these numbers to tell any story you want, and that was it. And like, to which to someone like me who's a wise ass, and I'm like, oh really? I'm going to put that to the test, but but yeah, it's just I'm gonna say this sentence and I'm gonna let it die. Doug, I know you want to get in on that bit, but don't. Um, but it's I draw parallels early days to where we are with cars to gun control 20, 30 years ago. And how now there are being laws being written by people who don't even know the specific components of a firearm and what the difference between a, let's just say, a brace and a stock, or why braces were instituted. And I've already said more than I want to, but the point of the matter is that you have people governing, creating laws who the average person knows more about the subject matter than the person who I almost made a really bad pun there. Who are making the decisions. And yes, it's same way of saying making the decisions. And I'm not going to sit here and say one way or the other on gun advocacy or gun control or any of that sort of stuff. What I'm saying is that if you go and you look at a lot of this stuff, the people who know the least are making the biggest rules, and that is dangerous. And I think, in automotively
Yeah.
speaking, you know, we have other topics. I need to step aside for a second, but I will just leave it with this. Um, one of the one of the first paragraphs in the "How to Be an Evil Dictator" handbook is to limit your population's mobility. Chad, out.
I don't know. My thing before you go, real quick, is and you don't have to act for this, but uh, maybe if you don't know a lot about something, maybe shut the fuck up a little bit. Um, Also have discussions and talk and learn, but maybe shut the fuck up a little bit and talk about and learn before you actually like make a rule about it. I think that's
Yeah.
just a good general rule to live by.
I mean, let me put it to you this way. We couldn't graduate college without proving we knew the subject matter in our classes.
Confirmed. Sitting right here. Yep.
Doug
Accurate.
couldn't go out and sell Volvos without proving he knew the subject matter. You couldn't copyright without proving you could copy writing.
Oh man, that's good. So go do your pee or whatever you have to do, and then I will engage with chat for a little bit. Be engaging. Hello, let's engage together. Yes, hello. What have you guys been saying? I have not really looked at you at all, and I apologize for that. Let's go all the way back to when the beginning of this conversation started about Dodge. Anthony, you had righted. Right. I think all it's gonna take for people to change their tone is Dodge dropping some new videos of their small displacement in EV cars straight slaying. Yeah, I mean, once we get some proof of concept, that will probably shut up a lot of us, including myself. But until we get it, it's all just vaporware. Um, let's see. What else do we have here? Doug, you said you're here. Hello, I know you're here. Hello, hello. Um, oh, Anthony saying the whole diesel delete thing is a shit show. Yeah, I mean it is. It is and it isn't. These people like they know it's tough. It's tough. That's a tough one because you should be able to tune your car and you should be able to like manipulate your settings and stuff like that. That's just part of hot rodding and tuning. But at the same time, like they're telling you not to do it in lieu of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in fines, and yet you keep doing it. Find something else to do, maybe. Like if you're good at tuning for diesel, you're probably going to be good at tuning for regular gas too. So, not telling these people what to do with their business or that they should just stop their livelihood, but like clearly there's a crackdown on it. Maybe like let's start to look at something else here, because if you keep doing that, I don't know. Learning a new skill is probably a lot cheaper than a couple $1 million in government fines. Just saying. Um, let's see. The masses still believe in the 100 mpg carb. I don't know what that is. Is that a thing? I don't know much about like carbs, to be quite frank. as a enthusiast. I'm not like huge into old technology, so please educate me on that one. Um, Anthony just responds, it's on a 50cc moped. Yeah, really large thing on tiny thing. That works. Um, let's see. What else are you guys saying? Um, Chad, I like that Chad is involved in the stream when even he's not here. Chad responding to Anthony saying this is church tonight. Um, they can pry my internal combustion engine powered car out of my cold dead fingers. Um, and Doug following up, we should all just admit that we're just pirates. Yes, I'm a pirate, but I'd like to be Johnny Depp if that's okay. At least like, weird Jack Sparrow kind of shit. Because that's the fun. That's the fun one. Um, yeah, I'm actually with Chad here. They can pry ICE out of my cold dead fingers, quite frankly. Um, I may own an EV at one point just because why not? They're fun. I mean, instant torque is it's a lot of fun, got to be honest. And a Volvo XC40 with 400 plus horsepower and an EV drivetrain. I've driven one. Really freaking quick. And in a small little SUV, it's pretty damn fun. So being able to have that and like keep up with an M3 and beat it to 60, that's cool. That I do dig. Um, let's see on Doug's carb thing. Here we go. Uh, let's see. Chad Car Show and Greg wants to be a drunk pirate. Doesn't. Come on. Story has it back in the day, a 100 mpg carb was developed and patented, and oil companies bought the patent up and won't let it out which is just hogwash in so many ways. It's an old urban legend that you can still hear in some old car groups. Ah, yes. That sounds just fantastic. I hope someone brings that up next time so I could be like, "Oh man, where did you hear that from? Do you have any proof?" I'd really love to see it. Oh man. Next year for the move, we'll have to make more alcohol and watch Firebird 2015 AD. Yes, I'm down. Uh, Chad is walking the dog, by the way. Crossovers are not, nor that will they ever be fun. So here's the thing. Here's the thing about that. I mostly agree with that, but there are some crossovers that I don't consider crossovers. The Volvo XC40 is one of them. The Volvo XC40, in my opinion, is basically just a lifted hatchback. That's all it is. That is not a crossover. That's literally just a hatchback with a lift kit. So if you got an XC40, an EV XC40, and dropped it 3 inches, or even not even, maybe like 2.5 inches, um, and basically just did that, you have a hot hatch because it's over 400 horsepower and you have a lower center of gravity and done. Like it looks cool. It's a good look 40 with 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 a drop and nothing else done to it. I mean, I would daily drive the shit out of that. No crossover is better than it would be as a proper car. Yeah, I mean, look, sure, agree. But some of them can be made into proper cars, i.e., just some drop in suspension and handling, and you have the same thing. The end. There you go. Anthony's on board. XC40 is a good looking ride. It is. It's a cool looking car. It's a great design. And quite honestly, if I had one, I would drop the shit out of it and um you know, I mean, I would do that. I think it. Plus, the nice thing about those is they don't just come in EV. So there's also a turbo one, which I've driven, and it's actually quite punchy. It's faster than a GTI, 0 to 60. I think is like 6.1, and the XC40 is like 5.8 or something. Either way, it's faster 0 to 60. Excuse me, than a GTI, which is a hot hatch. So, I mean, right there. Uh, drop that and get a tune, maybe bigger turbo. You got yourself a Volvo hot hatch, basically, right there. That would be cool. I think that would be really interesting. Let's see. What else have you guys said? Um, let's see. Maybe in the future we'll see a return to chopped tops. Maybe. I don't know. Well, eh, I don't know. I do think that I think that personally, I think the next thing in car enthusiasm, and this doesn't have to do anything to do with us. I think it's going to be mostly the next generation. So like my kids coming up, the kids that are like between 5 and 10 years old right now, they're being driven around in these crossovers. We were driven around in sedans and coupes and stuff, right? Mostly, and SUVs in a way, right? They're getting driven around in all these crossovers and stuff. And those that are going to be enthusiasts, if they have any nostalgia to them, then they're probably going to want to start modifying things that maybe they were driven around in as a kid. And I think maybe the next big thing is like taking crossovers and making them actually palatable, which I could see happening. Like crossovers are boring and bland, so why not try to hot rod that? Because the best thing you could do for a crossover is try to make it more interesting. The worst thing for a crossover is to continue to drive it soullessly. So maybe it's little Timmy got driven around in his mom's Mazda CX. What's the mid range one? CX-5. Maybe little Timmy got driven around in his mom's CX-5, and he has lots of fond memories with the Mazda CX-5. So when he gets his first car, he either gets his mom's CX-5 or buys one or gets given one or whatever. And then he's like, you know what? I have a lot of good memories in this car, but I'm a car enthusiast and I want to make it cool. So he slams it and puts a big old turbo on it and makes it more. So I don't know. Maybe that's, maybe that's, hey, I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm just saying it's probably going to happen. Oh man. I'm waiting for someone to do it because I know someone's going to do it.
You E2
But
Brute.
is that not like I don't think that's outlandish thinking though.
Okay, so just
I see it happening.
okay. So, um, first enthusiast based car that you kind of sort of maybe thought about modifying was that
That
you
I
owned.
kind like
That you owned
that
and you
I
drove.
owned.
Yeah.
I don't know, my Honda Accord. I didn't actually modify it because I didn't have money for it, but that's the one that I thought I would actually do stuff to. The one that I actually did stuff to was my WRX.
Right. And I've known you quite a long time.
Way too long.
At no point did your family have a hatchback.
No, correct, but I think that
And how many Volvos did
I
your
mean
family own?
none, but the whole
How many
reason I
Jaguars?
got into Volvos is because I had fond memories of them. So I used to watch them in the British Touring Car Championship in the early '90s, and one of my best friends, who you know because we went to school with him, Chris Stokes, his parents drove Volvos for a long time. So
I mean, Eric had
when
a
I was
Volvo
like
for a
really
while.
when I was like really young, like K through like what's that? That's a name you haven't heard for a while.
No, I
Yeah.
said Eric had a Volvo
Oh, that's
before the
true. Eric did
Brougham.
have a Volvo. I forgot about that. I forgot about that's right. That's right. That's right.
I get what you're saying, but
Yeah, so, like I don't know, you're gravitated towards maybe something you have a fond memory of, and it doesn't necessarily have to. The little Timmy and his mom CX-5 is just an example. Like, I don't know, maybe you just really liked the style the Ford Escape and you want to turn it into a modern day Focus RS, but those are all gone. I don't know. Maybe it's something, but there's gonna be like enthusiasts are just gonna find a way. Is what I'm saying. Like, and I
Right.
think that I think
I'll
you're gonna see more crossover modification as the next generation kind of like gets
it's
into cars.
that's more indicative of the fact that that's what's going to be on the I can afford a car market
True.
than anything else. But like for me, I look at it more as like, oh, so and so, my neighbor down the
Mm,
street's dad had a cool car. Or for me, it's aspirational. It's I didn't
yeah.
want what sort of they had. Although I think it would be kind of cool to play around with an old Isuzu Trooper, but for a completely different segment. But like it's aspirational, right? Like, you know, let me put it to you this way, right? Like the Top Gear did a or Grand Tour, I think, did the segment on the class system with cars that they got as their fathers got, and how like some were good, some were bad, and like the
Yeah.
aspiration for something more is kind of what got it into it. Um, I don't know. Like, here's the thing. Like, I think you're gonna see modified crossovers and stuff like that, just because that's what's gonna be affordable and like not for nothing. The easiest cars to mod are the cars with the biggest following. It's been a hell of a lot easier modifying the Mustang than it is for you to modify any of your Volvos, because the Mustang community is
Oh
just
yes.
bigger.
Yes, and there needs to be a market for it. And there's not a huge market for a small market company trying to modify their cars.
You're already starting to see people like modifying Foresters and slamming them and stuff like that. Like, I get
That's
kind of
actually what I was going to
I
mention.
get kind of what you're saying, but I also think like our generation was shuttled about for the most part from practice to school to wherever vacation and stuff
Hmm.
in minivans, and we didn't all grow up wanting to modify minivans.
No, true, but I'm not sure that that's 100% accurate. Minivans were definitely prevalent, but they weren't really like a huge go-to.
Oh, whoops! I hit the wrong screen. No, we're here.
We were shuttled around in them, but like not everyone had them. I'd say we were shuttled around more in sedans than we were in minivans because sedans were still the sales kings. Minivans got up there, but they still weren't like the family car. The family car was still a sedan when we were kids. And minivans fell out of favor while we were getting into college. So, I mean, they had their time and a lot of people loved them, but I can only name one friend that had one when I was a kid. Well, two. That's it.
Really, two.
Dimmler and Jimmy Reed. That's it. Those are the only two people I knew that had
The
minivans.
only two people you knew.
Did you have a minivan?
Yes, we did. Chevy Venture. To be
I didn't. I never
and in
knew
the
that.
Chevy Venture's defense, we my dad one night hit a deer doing 35, and it like cracked one little tiny thing on the grill. That was the extent of the damage.
Nice.
Um,
Also, top tip: go buy a Chevy Venture.
Top
Um,
tip:
I, ne-
don't.
I,
Um,
I never was in that car. Because we were never like friends that I think were shuttled around together mostly. Like the friends that I was like really like shuttled around with was mostly the kids in my own neighborhood from getting picked up at school or like doing other things. Like when we started to like actually really hang out, we had cars. Like, because we hung out a bunch, we hung out a bunch when we were like kids, but our parents would drive us there.
right, right, and I mean, so like,
So I was never in your minivan, really.
look, um, there. I don't think I'll be ever really shifted off of this, but the reason crossovers exist is because of the popularity of minivans. And I understand what you're saying. I understand what kind of Doug's saying
No,
and
that
stuff like
I
that.
agree with that.
They were a
You could
huge
make,
part of it. You go to any
yeah,
baseball game,
you could
soccer
make the same
game,
argument for SUVs.
right? But keep in mind where we grew up versus elsewhere. Minivans were the more
Sure.
affordable option to the SUV because the SUVs we grew up with were still body on frame.
Yeah, sure.
So to make a
Totally agree
body
with
on
that.
frame SUV, 4-wheel drive, and have enough for the white collar, let's say, they were pricier. They just were. You know,
Yeah.
look, kind of went down a hole here, but I honestly think,
Look what happens when you step away. I come up with wild ideas and make
yeah,
you
you
make you
you
angry.
make me talk about freaking crossovers, the death of enthusiasm.
Chad, Mazda CX-9 or Chrysler Pacifica, not the minivan version. Go.
I mean, before it was the nameplate for the minivan, the Pacifica was a hot pile of garbage, as were most
I
Chryslers of that era.
mean, yes. I'm just trying to make you talk about crossovers more.
Well, here's the thing. I've probably driven more variety of car, granted not recently, but more variety of car, more different types of cars than almost anyone else out there. Um, and it was because of my time working at Enterprise. Um,
Hmm.
everything from, we had everything from Benzes down to a Kia, whatever the crap their small car was called, that went back when Hyundai and Kia were making absolute and utter horrific crap. Um, you know, uh, Chevy, Chrysler of that era made horrible cars. The Malibu of that era, terrible.
Oh man, any modern Chevy Malibu is just trash.
The eh, Apart from the trucks, anything Chrysler of that era, the Caliber, the Journey, the little crossover Jeepy things, like they made a Compass and I forget what the other one was,
Yeah,
but they were the same freaking thing with a different body. It's like, what dumbass?
yeah,
It's like, they don't like that body style, but they do. But they might like this.
yeah.
Let's make them both.
The only modern Chrysler worth owning,
Viper.
and only because of its uniqueness, not because of its like coolness at all. No, like, did you say Viper?
Yes.
I mean that's a Dodge. Um,
Who owns Dodge?
shh, it's badged as a Dodge. I'm talking the Chrysler badge because this car didn't have anything else as a sister car. Is the Crossfire, that like weirdo,
Oh,
like
you mean the
curved back
10-year
hatch
old
thing?
SLK.
Correct. Yes.
So it does
Yes.
have a cousin.
I'm talking about within the Dodge like Chrysler like swapping things. Yes, it's on an old SLK platform, but that's the only one to have because it's actually like unique. It's still a huge pile of trash, but it's still the only like unique interesting thing from like the 2000s Chrysler era that I would actually even consider owning.
I stand by Viper.
I mean, look, Viper and Prowler, if we're going back that far, hell yeah, I'm in.
Oh, talk about a missed opportunity. The
I
Prowler.
know.
Oh, if that had anything
Prowlers,
remotely
Prowlers are
resembling
cool.
an interesting engine, that would have been an
I
instant
know.
classic.
They made a Hellcat one. Someone shoved a Hellcat in that thing.
Right, as well they should have.
I
I
know.
mean,
I don't know how they did it, but good for them. Golf clap.
um, the oh man, the Prowler with just a 5.7 Hemi in it would have
Oh.
they would have had weightless like
Yeah. And actually it was never a Chrysler. It was a Plymouth.
it was,
Right,
and
if
then I
my
think for
memory
a year
serves
it was
correctly.
Chrysler when Plymouth went under.
Oh, okay. I didn't
Because
I didn't
American
realize
car
that it
companies,
actually was
what?
rebadged.
Why have one reasonably priced brand when you could have 17?
Yes.
And then
The
the all
Mercury
time,
Taurus Grand National, whatever the hell it is. Or not Grand
well,
National.
Ford and Mercury, um, and then Mercury was the slightly nicer
Lincoln.
trim package standard, but really didn't get much nicer than that. And then you had
Yeah.
you had Dodge, Chrysler, um,
Plymouth.
Plymouth, all under the same envelope.
Yep.
Um,
And they really were a shit show, weren't they?
and then GM was insane. You
Oh yeah,
had
GM had like
you
100.
had Chevy, Pontiac, Saturn. That's an interesting story for it. Uh,
Yeah,
Buick.
Vauxhall as well.
Well, if you want to go
Buick.
that route, Opel, Holden.
Well, that's what I'm gonna say. But we should because they're a global company. Like all of them were interchangeable. It's
Right, but
crazy.
when you pluck it out of a country and move it elsewhere, like those, an Opel brand nameplate holds value in
Oh
Europe.
yeah,
Vauxhall
correct.
and
Wouldn't do shit here.
Vauxhall up there, up in like England and stuff, holds value. Like same thing with Holden,
Yeah,
right? Like it, Holden's
yeah.
big in Australia. I
Reason
was talking
so
strictly,
Holden is the entire reason why I want a Chevy SS.
um, like,
Antoine, I know you're in here.
but I'm just talking about at one point, you could get a Pontiac G5, a Chevy I think it was a Chevy Cobalt, and a Saturn Ion or something like that, and they were the
Yep.
same car.
Yeah.
Like Saturn's an interesting story because like GM for decades could not make a small car, just couldn't do it. So they're like, all right, you people go over to Saturn and make us something
Yeah.
interesting. And
Doug has a great point. Dodge, Plymouth, and Chrysler all had neons.
yes,
Literally the same freaking car across three brands. Amazing. American ingenuity at its finest.
and if you go back
Um,
30, 40 years, Dodge, Plymouth, Chrysler all made a variation of a V8 that was nothing like the V8 that its sister, the Pontiac.
yep.
Pontiac made, I think, a 355, but Pontiac made a small block, and GM made a small block, and then Buick made a small block, and then it's like the fact that they lasted as long as they did and were only really killed by the recession is something of a small miracle.
Yeah, agree there. So actually, since we have our core audience here, and we love you guys for staying on
Ugh.
and chatting with us and what have you. Um, there's a topic that I was actually talking with Anthony about earlier today, as he brought up something kind of interesting, and it was about like rare cars, and it's about rare cars that people might not know a lot about, but also like what's the obnoxious factor? So I'll give you. I'm trying to bring it up here. That's why I'm looking down at my phone. So Anthony messaged me the other day. He asked me if I was coming to the Volvo barbecue in Maryland today because I think it was the VOOM. It's like Volvo Owners of Maryland. They usually have a barbecue like once or twice a year, and usually one big one or whatever. I said no, I couldn't make it, and then he said I learned some stuff today. And Anthony owns a V60, same generation as mine. Not a Polestar, but I believe
Peasant.
his is. And Anthony, you can correct it. What'd you say? What'd you say?
Peasant.
Peasant. Yes, Anthony and his peasant spec V60. No, no, I believe it's an R design. I think it's an R design. Please correct me in chat if I'm incorrect about that. But he said I learned some stuff today. One of 56 in white, one of four with the Alcantara seats. So I didn't even realize they made Alcantara seats for non-Polestar V60s, which is actually kind of cool. Just an interesting little tidbit of spec. Then we kind of got to talking about like, you know, uh, Volvo community people loving that, and he had said at least it's not as bad as the Corvette rare car speeches. So then I messaged Chad and was like, "Hey, we should talk about this tonight because it's a really interesting topic." So here's what I'm going to pitch to you, Chad: is when does a car conversation or when does a conversation about a rare car become too obnoxious, right? And here's an example. My Polestar, one of 165 in the U.S., only let's say I don't know the number, 70 in black, whatever, versus a Corvette of one of 2,500 in red it's a convertible with the Z51 package and chrome wheels and blah blah blah. Where is the line that you draw
Versus.
with how obnoxious a rare car conversation is to a cool spectrum versus like a just shut the F
All
up
right.
spectrum.
So I have two thoughts on this. I'll go with the first one. You seen the example you provided? it was interesting right up until the point where you're like had to use a car that is more well known to validate it, if that makes sense. It's like, hey, do you know that there was only 145 Volvo Polestars in this country in black? Huh, that's pretty interesting. Versus, like, that's where I kind of draw the line. Now, look, in
Okay.
certain circles, that's interesting. If you're surrounded by Volvoists, they're going to find that very interesting. When it's like any other conversation about, like, I look at it from a similar perspective of people when they talk about music and specifically bands, right? It's like, hey, did you know that they got their start here doing X, Y, and Z, blah, blah, blah. Oh, that's pretty cool. And then you go on, and then inevitably, it's like, yeah, I'm kind of a fan. I followed them before they got big. Now you're being annoying. like,
Yeah.
you
Oh,
know,
I only like their indie record that they produced and gave to only
or when
20
they start
people at a
sitting here
concert
saying
in
like,
1903. Yeah.
or when they sit here and start going with like, I liked them before they got corporate. Like,
Yeah, yeah. I get that.
but I
100%.
think at it, and then I was, because when you brought this up to me, that was my first thought. It was like, huh, that's pretty interesting. Oh wait, he's still talking. Um, and again, like I said, it depends on your audience, and I might catch a little flack with some of our Volvoists here in chat for that kind of take on it. And I'm not. Don't take what I'm about to say as a statement about your car, because I think your car is actually really
Right.
cool, and I honestly think the rarity is one thing to me for forever, and you've been witness to this. Anytime anyone comes up and you start talking about your car, and they're like, "Wow, that's a Volvo. It can do that. Oh, that's pretty dang cool." It's always the engine in your car and its positioning.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most interesting thing about it.
100%. Yes. Totally agree.
But for me, my give a damn is directly proportionate to the how interesting the car is from a for me at least from like enthusiasts. Like Doug put this thing about one of 31 Corvette Grand Sport convertibles ever made, and that's in this and like Corvette's interesting. They make a Grand Sport, interesting. They made a convertible, and only 31 were made. Well, that validates my longtime thing of convertibles just make good cars worse. Um, but
Yeah.
like but if like say someone were to sit here and start it's I don't want to like sit here and talk about like Mustang stuff gets me going and stuff, but I'd rather like for me a rarity of a car is an interesting factoid to the car, but not really something I care all that much regardless of the car, right? Like the Ferrari 250 GTO, incredibly rare, incredibly gorgeous, makes an amazing sound. Eh, like like the rarity doesn't make it cool to me, right? Like the rarity is a nice little footnote in that car's total package. The rarity of your car is a footnote to the total package of it. So my willingness to have that conversation is like, okay, cool. That's something interesting. I did not know that. Thank you for educating me. But I'd much rather talk about the performance specs or your plans for it or what you've done to it mod wise or like all that stuff down the road. Because to me, rarity of a car, like one of the things with the C30 was apparently it was pretty rare. People would come up to me and say, "Hey, I've never seen one of those before. What the heck is it? That's a Volvo?" Like that was kind of cool, right?
Yeah.
But like I then would talk about like, yeah, it's actually kind of cool. It's got a 2.5 liter turbocharged engine, 230-ish horsepower from factory, a little less than that. I know Doug will correct me.
It was like 222.
Something to that effect. I don't know. I immediately modified it.
Yeah. 227, I want to say maybe. I think it's 227.
We're literally talking less of a, wagon train's worth of horsepower.
Yeah.
But like the conversation I enjoyed having was like, okay, cool, that started it. But let's talk about how like, yeah, it looks cool and weird and different and all this other sort of stuff. But it's got some chops to back it up.
Right.
Like I guess at the end of the day, rarity is not something I care entirely all that much about. So my willingness
Interesting.
to have that conversation is a little bit the okay, you're annoying is shorter to me. That time frame is shorter to me because like
Okay.
as a car guy, I want to know more about your car. Like, great, that's cool. Your car's rare, but like, what's the engine? What's this? Oh my gosh, that thing has six piston, almost 15-inch rotors up front. That's super. I didn't know they did that sort of thing. Like, right, like,
Yeah.
um,
And I think for me it just to kind of like piggyback off that point, like to me the rarity it's more about like what part why is it rare?
right,
Like I guess a good example of that is something I would geek out about is like a Pagani Zonda. Okay, cool. That's a rare car. Very small production, amazing beauty, insane sound. Like though of course you're gonna geek out about something like that. You know, almost every enthusiast would. With something else that geeks me out is like exactly what you said about my car is like, yes, this is rare, but it's rare because of the engine and it's rare because of the production numbers. Like they only made 165 in 2016 of these with the six-cylinder engine, but then they like as soon as 2017 hit, they more than quadrupled the amount of production for the U.S. for wagons. Like there's like something like 750 wagons in the U.S. with the four banger twin charged. And that's again, it's still a cool car, but it's not the same. This has the sound, it has a rarer engine. The engine is just cool. So like specific parts about cars make me interested in it because it's rare. So like Corvettes on the whole aren't rare cars. But if you have the only one from factory that came in purple, I'm going to want to know why. Because why the hell is
and
your
what your
Corvette purple
monthly
and why
liquor
the hell did
budget
they paint it
is,
that way from factory? What's that?
and what your monthly liquor budget is, because I'm guessing it's high.
but like
I
but that's
I,
sort
I
of like
get
what
what
I'm
you're saying.
saying.
I
Like
get what you're saying.
why on earth did you paint that from factory and spec it the way you did purple? I need to know the story behind that. I understand it's rare. It's it's a one of one from factory with purple. The rest of the car is just a normal vet otherwise. Why in holy hell did you do that? And I at least want to know the story behind it. I don't
Right.
really care about the rarity in that respect. Like if it's gonna be a rare car, like cool, V60 Polestar, great. A V70R is a great another great example. A rare car from factory, hopped up Volvo. You know, not a lot of those exist. How many came from Volvo? How many did they make? Oh well, they only made like 3,400 of them over 3 years. Well, that's a pretty rare car, at least for the U.S. That's a pretty rare car. You know what? Well, you know, I want to know more about the car. Like, oh well, it's got a five-cylinder engine that sounds like a mini V10. Cool. Well, it's only one of 25 painted in this color. Really, that's interesting. Like, so like the performance kind of brings me in to like the other oddities about the car because I'm sort of like Doug DeMuro in the way of like I like weird, interesting quirks and things like that, but I also want to have a gateway to know about those things. I don't want to just be like, oh well, here's a rare car.
Right. Well,
Great. Well, what makes it rare, and does it is it? I mean, if it's a rare like good example, like is it a rare Saturn Ion? Well, I'm probably not going to give a shit about it, honestly. Like, if
right.
it's a one of one Saturn Ion, I don't really care. If it's a
The
one
red
of
lines were
one
pretty interesting, by the by.
sure. But if it's a one of one like Corvette that has a V8 and oh by the way it happens to be a Grand Sport or a Z06 spec'd in only this way, well, oh that's interesting. That's very cool because it's a performance car and I want to know more about that. But like I don't know, it just there's ways into it that that make me more interested and I feel like the obnoxious factor, it's sort of if it's a cool car and has that cool car factor and there's cool components about it, I'm gonna want to talk to you about it. I'm gonna want to hear about it. But if you're just trying to tell me that your EK Civic hatch that has a fart can, a drop, some 15-inch wheels on it, and a painted engine bay is rare, I don't really want to hear much about it. I don't really care
So,
because that exists elsewhere.
so I think there's actually a lot of parallels to this in dating. And hear me out.
Dating. Interesting.
Hear me
Okay.
out.
Where are we going with
All
this?
right. So let's just say you have a type, right? And I'm just talking at this point in the ball game, physical attraction, right? Like might be redheads, it might be a certain shape, what have you, right? It might be eyes, a
Also,
smile,
redheads. Mm.
right? But like your type is your type. Like Greg and I could sit here and argue about who the I don't know, the hottest actress is or who the hottest girl we went to high school with. We're not going to, but the point is that we all have our type. And for you to see that type is something of a rarity, right? Otherwise, like, it doesn't really pique your interest. But if all that it was just that, you're going to lose interesting if there's nothing beneath the surface, if there's no personality or um, you know, you don't have similar interests or any of that sort of thing. It's going to be okay. That was neat, but I'd rather spend my time over here, right? Um, so rarity can start the conversation. For me, it can't carry it because that's just you're going to lose me real quick. Because I honestly do not care how rare your car is. Um, if like oh, that's cool. They only made 72 Camrys with that paint wheel interior radio combination. So like
So, like,
it's a conversation starter, right? Like I come up to you and
yeah.
say, "Hey, look, that like let's say you see a Volvo station wagon at some place you don't expect it to be. I don't know, the track. How many times do people come up to you at the track and be like, "What the hell is that?" And you wait, you ran 13 threes? Hold on a sec. What's under that? Blah, 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 blah. Right? Like, and you
Yeah,
can sit
yeah,
here and
yeah,
say,
yeah.
hey,
So,
it's this rare, but
the
really
performance like draws you in. Yeah,
it's like,
and that's
it's why I'm
I
going to
do agree
ask
with
you
that.
out, but it's not why I'm going to keep you around.
Right. No, I think that's actually an incredible analogy, and I think that's a really smart way to kind of say this because if you're talking about if you're talking about rarity, there's only certain things that are going to be interesting about that rarity. Like again, the vet example is a great example of this. Like, the guys at the meets that are just like, well, this is only one of 1,000 or one of 500 painted in candy apple red with chrome wheels and yada yada yada. And just like, bro, I don't care. You have a red vet with chrome wheels. Cool. Like that might work well with a lot of the guys that are like 65 plus, but I don't really care. You have a vet. Good for you. Vets are cool cars. They're quick. They look good. Awesome. That's where it stops. I don't need to know about the rest of your spec. I don't care. It's not interesting to me. But if someone comes up to me with like a ZR1 that's painted orange and yellow stripes, I'm like, well, why in the fuck did you do that? I'm
Absinthe.
gonna have a conversation with you that probably talks a lot more about the performance of the car, and the
And you're
orange and
more
or
than
the
likely going to
purple
get
and
a
yellow stripes
contact
are
high.
just the yeah, they're right. Exactly. It's just like, well, that's the pickup line, if you will. The paint job is the pickup line to the actual conversation that we have about the performance and the coolness of the car, which
Yeah.
is again a rare car. Like a ZR1, they didn't make a lot of them. So like, I'm totally on board with that analogy, and I totally agree with you.
So I'll say one more thing and then get to chat because they've been chatty. Um,
Yes.
it's you're drawn. So a ZR1 might be rarer, but I'm not drawn to it because of the rarity. I'm drawn to it because of the performance. And okay,
Sure.
it's part of the reason why I love modifying cars. I understand my last 2 points have been dating and modifying, totally unrelated. But that's why I like modifying my cars because I can make it special. I can make them powerful. I can make them look whatever the way I want. I can make them do whatever the heck I want, whether it be handling, straight line, etc., etc. And it's unique. It's different. Any
Yeah.
schmuck with $35,000 can go buy an S550 Mustang from 2015 to 2017. How do I
Sure.
separate myself from that schmuck? Well, I could either get the Shelby or I can modify. So, like,
How could I separate from said schmuck?
I mean, easier said than done. But just real quick, just going into chat, Anthony goes, convertible doubles the cool. Disagree.
Yeah, I did. I saw that comment. Convertibles aren't cool. They can be, but overall they're not.
Here's the thing: if it's convertible, designed to be a convertible from factory and engineered as such, that's one thing.
Yes,
If you
that's
cut the roof
different.
off of a car to make it a convertible, it is compromised, and I don't like that.
The only exception is the Jag F-Type V6, just because it sounds amazing.
It also sounds amazing with the roof on and the windows down.
It does, but that's the only car I've driven as a convertible, and I've driven probably 3 or 4 dozen convertibles at this point. That I was just like, oh, I get convertibles. That car made me get and understand convertibles to the point where I was just like, okay, I get it. But 99.9% of the time, I'm not buying the convertible version. I'm buying the coupe or the actual car version.
Antoine goes, early on when I got my car, I didn't mind answering questions, but years in ownership, the same question from different people did get very annoying. Now, 6 years in ownership, it finally died off. If I did get questions about it now, at least people finally know what it is now, and I don't have to be long-winded about the car anymore. I get that. I love talking about cars with people. So, like, I don't mind having the same conversation like with the C30 or when people recognize like, hey, uh like yesterday, for example, one of the guys I was playing golf with, um he's like, so what the heck's done to your car? It's obviously got an exhaust. And then it was 20 minutes later. But no, like I love having those conversations because usually when people like start asking about modifications and stuff, they're car people, so that you kind of speak the same language. I can see how it might get annoying, but I don't know. Like we've said multiple times on this channel, I like to do anything I can that kind of fosters enthusiasm. Sometimes rare occasions, sometimes it's like, you're a dipshit, and here's why. But that's more because the human is a dipshit, not so much the car. Case in point, Loud VW guy has upgraded to, I think, a Mark 7 GTI with a turbo, or the turbo GTI, and a loud ass exhaust. And it's fed me the same BS about it's tuned, man. I got to drive it a certain way. I go, your car might have a tune, but it's not tuned. If you would like to see a tuned car, how much time you got? Because I'll pop the hood. Because the kid was very aggressive. What's that?
Did we hear that? It was a really nice sounding car driving down. I didn't know if you could hear it in the background.
But like,
Never mind.
I had to talk to the kid. I'm like, look, man, I get it. I love cars. Blah blah blah. Just you don't need to be in that low of a gear. You don't need a rev match. You don't need to rev it up when you first start it, which in fact is a terrible thing to do. But like when he started going on and on about like, hey old man, you don't know what you're kind of talking about, which was pretty much his tone. I was like, okay, how much time do you have? Because the modifications on my car make more horsepower than your car.
The modifications on my car could buy your car 3 times over.
Exactly. So, but it's like, I don't know what.
And not from a snooty standpoint, more of just like a, you need to
I
shut
think
up
I
now
think the thing that
standpoint.
kind of shut him up was like, he's like, no man, you Mustang guys don't understand. When you have like a turbo and you have boost, you got to do it a certain way, blah blah blah. And I was like, I'll stop you right there, because I have boost. And then his eyes got huge. It's like, oh.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, like I said, 435 from.
Not only do I have boost, I have 2 boosted cars. One of them is a turbo. The other is a supercharger.
Yes. Well, I did. This isn't.
At the time. Well, at the time, I'm saying. Like, you
No, no,
still
no,
have
no.
the C30.
The kid has evolved. He went from VR6 Golf to recently, like within the last few months, getting the GTI.
Oh, okay. Now I follow. Okay, I didn't realize the G. I
So
had
we've had
forgotten he had
conversations
the
before, and he's given me this line of
VR60.
bullshit before. So finally, I was like, "Look, dude, I'm you in like 20 years," and my soul left my body for a moment. But um, I go,
uh,
dude, you have to listen to me, man.
them youngins.
Like I am a car enthusiast. I am an advocate for enthusiasm. I am an advocate for modification. Like I am your best friend because you don't understand what the government's trying to do to people who modify cars. So, but like I was just trying to explain to him, like, dude, some of this stuff you don't need to do. Like case in point, when you pull into development, just coast off boost. You know what that's going to do? Cool your turbo down, so you don't need a like like I just
Right.
talking to this kid, and I was like, finally, I didn't snap it. I'm like, finally, I'm like, bro, um, I have, and I just started listing mods, and he's like, and he hasn't driven like a dickhead since, and and I
That's
was like,
good.
and I go, I have, and I finally, I'm talking to him, I was like, dude, my car is way louder than yours. Have you ever heard it? He's like, no. Are you sure it's louder? I go, I'm very sure it's louder. Very, very sure it's
Yeah,
louder.
trust
I
me.
just don't
Trust me,
don't
it's
drive it
louder.
like an asshat. So I don't know what we were
Yeah.
talking about, but let's get to Doug's comment. Doug likes cars that represent
Yes.
neat elements of automotive history. Uh, Intentionally not making many of something isn't impressive to me. Agreed. Just basically, when you're making a fewer run of a car, you're artificially jacking the price up, or not artificially. You're just selling a car that should be a certain price at a higher price. Doug likes his purple Volvo, although it's not from factory. Um, you like making up irrelevant scores that don't work well.
Oh, that's a Doug DeMuro comment.
Okay.
Because Doug has the Doug score at the end.
Okay. Because I was like,
And he's
wait,
like,
Doug, I'm gonna need Doug to go out and do his paddock and give me a Doug. I thought it was a Doug France
he's
score.
talking. He Doug Friend's scores are terrible. No,
Yeah.
yeah, he. So I don't know. At some point, Doug DeMuro said, "I'm gonna make a Doug score," because so many commenters were like, "You should put a score to all these reviews," and he eventually did one. And the biggest problem with like the Doug score is that he started it, and I think that's the issue. He started it because your score of a car, it sort of evolves over time. Like think about what was the Volvo that you drove, the V60, or no, the S60, right?
Yeah.
What you scored that car initially, would you score that car the same way right now?
Um.
Probably not. I would wager not.
So
Not like
here's
drastically
so
different.
here's the thing.
I'm talking
Everything's
like
like
even just like one or two things could be off, right?
Honestly, I think it would get. I would rate that car very similar to what I rated it back then. I think the problem with attaching a score, and I was thinking about this for like our reviews, like
Hmm.
into the YouTube rabbit hole. Like if you notice on like the main channel and on the second channel, we're experimenting with doing a little bit more with thumbnails, i.e., presenting ourselves on there because
Yeah.
faces get clicks. Is the short version of it.
Right.
And I was thinking, it's like
Yeah.
if you're just doing consumer advice and the face is there, it's almost like, who is this guy? So like a Hansen score or something like that. The problem with scoring,
Right.
it's not necessarily would you. So like the S60, to use your example, I think the same about that car now as what I did when I reviewed it. A very, very good car, surprisingly does a lot of things surprisingly well for me, let down by a slow, dim-witted transmission. The interior still is fantastic, and those Volvo interiors are going to age phenomenally because they're so
Yeah, they
simple.
really are.
Nothing, and like I'll paraphrase here, but nothing dates a car more than its infotainment system.
Yep.
You know, which was one of the reasons my M3, I was like, wow, this feels really old and dingy. Not because it was old and dingy, but because like the infotainment system was felt so dated. Like I had a 2002 Lexus IS 300 and a 2002 BMW M3, and I would have just based on the center console, the infotainment, all that, you would have bet dollars to, like, if an alien came down from outer space, they would have thought that the Lexus was 5 years newer.
Yeah,
So like,
agree.
so like, but to go back to what I was saying about it, is like, if we're gonna put a face to the image, doing something with like a scoring system might be worth it. But like, the problem with the scoring system is that, let's just say you get in a car and it's like the best car you've driven for the type of car that it is. And at that point in time, it handles well, it has a great ride, the interior is very nice, the engine's both powerful and refined, transmission is good, smooth shifts or sporty shifts, or both, or whatever. At that moment in time, it could get a 9.5 out of 10 on the Gregskin score. But then 5 years from now, something that comes along that's better than it in every conceivable way, you now have to rate a little bit higher.
Yeah.
Like, that's the problem with scoring, is that, like,
Yeah,
and not for nothing, having it be scientific enough takes time. So some cars might be too low, some cars might be too high, looking back on stuff. So like, a score is great. I think honestly, if like, for that to work, you have to segment it. Appearance, interior.
I also think, well, right, and that's exactly where I was going. I think if you make a score, it needs to be very objectionable, or no, I'm sorry, no, it has to be objective. And Doug's scores are very subjective because he's created these 10 categories, and the point that I was going to make was exactly what Antoine just said. I think Doug DeMuro's scores are biased on everything he drives, and very picky if it's not something he likes or something that's not his way. And that's actually something he's talked about in some of his scoring. Is it's weighted to make enthusiast cars better. So if he drives a Pagani or a Bugatti, it's going to be near the top, just period. Because it doesn't matter about practicality. He's going to give tens on handling and cool factor and all this other stuff. So that whole category is going to get that whole category of 5 about like the interestingness and coolness and maybe rarity and whatever. That's going to get like high scores, 9s and 10s throughout the board. Practicalities are going to get 1s and 2s, whatever. But like, he's already noted that in many of his videos, like, it's weighted for performance cars because he likes driving performance cars. And I think that's where you get into a big murky area of reviews, is especially with like YouTube car reviews, which is why I like Hansen's a lot, honestly, because he seems to actually understand that people are going to buy these cars. Whereas Doug DeMuro is giving you information about what he likes about the car, and not necessarily that people are going to buy the car based on what he says.
Right. Well, that comes
because
down.
he's reviewing the car about what he likes, and that's not something that what Car and Driver would do. Hansen is what Hansen's doing is sort of taking an auto week Car and Driver approach and saying, oh, okay, well, here's what the car is. Here's what you need to know before you purchase it. Do with this information as you will. Whereas Doug DeMuro is more just like, I'm an entertainment factor, and this car is something that I'm going to give a score to based on my own opinion, and not necessarily what you would purchase the car for.
Right. And that's fine. I mean, part of
Yeah,
the
it's not a bad thing. I'm just saying
we
that's
have
different.
Hansen do reviews is the style in which he does reviews.
Right.
For me, it was, and I've mentioned this a few times. For me, it was very difficult to get what I like in a car and separate that from what the overwhelming majority of the people like in a car. You
Right.
know, if I wasn't into a car, I wasn't into a car. Like, it was really hard for me to be like, but the rear leg room and the cargo space is fantastic. Eh.
Yeah.
So I totally get that. Anywho, Anthony goes, Mustang example. The new Edge came out with some weird purple that had an oil slick rainbow thing going on. What color was that? I believe it was like Mystic Purple or Mystic or something to that effect.
It's Mystichrome.
I've only ever seen one, and stupid rare factory color. Well, it was a stupid rare factory color, and it was stupid rare because it was on the Cobra R originally. So,
Wait, Co- was
or
it
I'm sorry, the
Cobra
SVT
R?
Cobra, just the Cobra.
Yeah, SVT Cobra, I think it was. Yeah, yeah.
Which, again, performance variants are rarer. Um,
Right.
Doug goes, Chad knows about dating. Maybe I have no idea. Um, based on my
Keep
current
going. I will be right back.
based on current status, apparently I know not much. Uh, Doug, P1 Volvo C30 was designed as a convertible and a good car. The P80 version had just a hair of cowl shake. It was horrible. Huh. Interesting. Um, I'll be 100% honest. The C70s were like so close to being something for me. And this is me. This is just me being my taste. Again, why I don't do reviews for the channel anymore, if I'm being perfectly honest. It was so close, and then like little tiny design tweaks here or there, like the coupe variants of them. There was like a little thing here or there that was missing, and like they're good cars. I mean, obviously the P1 platform is very good, but it was just missing that one thing. But I totally get why people like them. Antoine goes, Gen Zers with tunes and modifications versus millennials with tunes and modifications. Our generations are really different when it comes to cars. I mean, I think generationally speaking, that's an interesting point because, like, I guess the perfect example of it is I'll just use myself as an example. I was raised by a car enthusiast, obviously my father, who was alive and active part of the late 60s, early 70s muscle car culture. Also, the same type of generation that did a lot of their own work. And I'm not saying we don't. I'm just saying when it came time to put the 327 in his Corvette, him and his buddies did it over the course of a weekend. And I understand that's still around today, but this comes into it's easier back in the day because there was like 12 wires versus today where you have over 100, right? Not here to debate that. But so like that was sort of ingrained on me. I did a lot of work, my own work on my cars. The Mustang notwithstanding. All you have to do is go back and look at this Volvo, the C30 series. I did a lot of that with some help from my buddies and stuff like that. But I think taste wise, I think I was raised in that I have sort of that classic taste applied to modern vehicles, if that makes any sense whatsoever. So things like a pop and crackle tune don't really do it for me. Flame tunes could care less. If it doesn't practically help the car achieve your goal, i.e., more power, smoother power delivery, stop, handle better, whatever, to me it's just eyewash. Whereas I think Gen Zers or you know the individuals of driving age that I would refer to as kids, they were raised more on the Fast and the Furious franchise, for example, where it was not necessarily the import scene, but Underglow. I had Underglow for a minute, but like that was only on one of my cars, and then or I didn't have Underglow. I had neons in my car. Bass sensitive too. But they grew up on that. So what do you see when you go and you look at like, the scenes in Tokyo Drift, for example, where all the different types of style, not just horsepower, not just body kits, but, stylistically speaking, or, the flame, the pop, the crackle, like all that stuff that came with like turbocharging small displacement cars, taken to 11. And I think that's where I modify for a performance gain, and there will be aesthetic mods, don't get me wrong, but it's in keeping with the theme of the car that I'm going for. Where I think the younger generation, power is one thing, but I think standing out is more important. And I'm generalizing because, like, obviously, one shoe doesn't fit everyone. So,
Don't be part of the crowd.
no.
Lots of camber.
fuck no. I mean, I do have my car is set up for handling right now, so I do have negative camber, but like
No,
nothing.
no, no, man. I mean like camber.
Yeah,
Ride on
I'll
only the inside
yeah.
of the tire.
I'll tell you what. I'll stance a car when you get a bigger turbo. Um,
Done. I'll do it tomorrow.
okay. I said I'd stance. I will stance a car when you get a bigger turbo.
It's a car,
Hmm.
not your Mustang, but a car.
I will stance a car when you get a bigger turbo.
Nick Knight, how are you doing this evening?
Hey, if that
Well, actually, that's not true. So, hang on. We need to clarify stance.
oh, I'll
Stance meaning
I'll put as much
cambered
negative
to
camber on a
oblivion.
car that you want me to.
No, your car
No.
must must be your car.
All right, fine. Won't be the Mustang.
No, must be the
I'll go
Mustang.
find $100 car on a fucking Craigslist and stance the shit out of it. The
I'll get a
Mustang.
$100 car on Craigslist that's running. I will buy exactly $100 worth of camber plates, stamp the shit out of it, and drive it into a ravine
Yes, and I've
and
spent
leave
$200,
it there.
and you finally made the mod that's going to make your car better, not just faster, better in every conceivable way.
Yeah, Doug, he didn't say you had to install the turbo. Just get one.
Doug, as the general of
Yes.
the shift squad, I expect better from you.
Yes. Oh, the technicalities. Oh, how the turntables.
Uh,
Yes.
it makes
Doug's like,
me
I got an extra XC70. Oh, that's great.
I want Greg's car to be I
Anyway,
want Greg's car to be better. Like this isn't
so
me
hang
just
on.
mocking him saying he has a small turbo, he doesn't make enough horsepower. This is not it. As we have touched on multiple times here, his car will run better in every facet of its use if he has a bigger back housing on his turbo. Not just the
So
bigger.
hold on. I mean, yes, agree. But hang on. So we need to talk about this list that made me make.
Uh,
The list of cars.
yes. So,
So we're going back to our conversation about rare cars, and I'm sure that's continued through like chat and everything. But the so Chad was just like, okay, here's the deal. Before we have this conversation, you need to make a list of rare cars, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I have 12 different cars. Well, 11 cars and one era of cars, just because I wanted to mix it up a little bit. So
okay.
I have 11 different cars that are considered rare
And
or potentially interesting that are sort of all over the map. So,
right. So this
what
kind
was
of
the whole reasoning behind this?
So one of the points I wanted to make with this is that rarity, an interesting car, rarity alone does not make an interesting car.
Okay.
They could have made 5. Like I'll use Doug's example of the Grand Sport convertible. There's only 31 of them. Doesn't mean I'm interested in it. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Whereas they could have made 10,000 of that. I still wouldn't like. Rarity plus a car needs to have something other than rarity to be interesting. So what I wanted you to do is just rattle the cars off, and I'll go yes or no on whether or not I find that car interesting, and if you bringing up its rarity would put me to sleep or not.
Okay. All right. Well, since Antoine is in chat, first one I will go with is Chevy SS.
I mean, yes, because it's a 4-door Camaro, and it's interesting. You basically, number one, it
Okay.
has that Holden air of Holden to it, so that Commodore kind of a thing.
Right. It is a Holden.
Well, I understand that. Except it
It doesn't
isn't.
have an
Except
air
it
of
is.
Holden.
Except it.
It is a Holden.
Except it isn't because the positioning of the steering wheel,
Well,
and the pedals.
fine. Fine.
But like,
whatever.
that's a rare, cool, interesting car. That if like you were to sit here and say they only imported X amount to the States, that's pretty interesting. Show me the engine.
Cool. Yeah, right. Okay. Then let's go with something a little bit different. Audi RS4 from the early 2000s.
100%. I want one.
Right. Cool. Why is it interesting?
See, the rarity has nothing to do with it. It's interesting because it's so growing up, when Greg and I grew up, if you wanted a sports sedan,
Later, Steve. Good night, brother.
enjoy, man. Job's important. Can agree to that.
Yes. Get some rest. Get that bread.
Back when Greg and I were growing up in our formative years of automotive enthusiasm, if you wanted a
Many decades ago.
fast sports sedan, your options were the M3 and the M3,
Yeah, pretty much.
and for that 1 year, the M3. So
Also the M5 if you had a bigger budget and a bigger family.
right, it was basic.
But that's really
it was basically like buying a T-shirt, but you could only buy that
Yeah.
T-shirt from BMW, and then you picked a size.
Yeah, those were the two benchmarks. Everyone else was just like,
For me,
fun. Let us get close.
For me specifically, I've actually a lot of the sports sedans that I am interested in could be considered M3 competitors. ATSV, the ISF, and now F Performance, and the C63 AMG for a minute. I don't know why that one didn't hold my attention as long as the others, but Rising,
ATSV, criminally underrated car, by the way.
phenomenal car. It's on my list.
Yeah, it's a extremely good car.
Yes.
I've driven it multiple times. So has Chad. It's like the CTSV gets all the headlines because it's the big V8 and it goes real fast and it's big and sexy.
The ATS and the C5.
Man, the ATS, that Alpha platform that they came out with, that the Camaro and the ATS were on for a while. Holy crap!
CTS
What
and the
what a
Holden.
world-beating platform that thing is.
Yes, I mean it's up there. But the
Yeah.
Audi RS4 was, I was like, man, that's cool, and like to the point that when I was looking, so there were technically 4 cars I was looking at when I first started my search when I bought my IS300. It was the IS300, the Volkswagen R32, the Audi S4, but with the 4.2 liter V8, and because of the world, an NSX. They were all within $3,000 to $5,000 of each other, going back 15 to 18-ish, 15 to 16 years ago. So I always kind of liked the Audi, and I liked that Audi V8. It made an awesome noise. But what I really liked about the RS4 was V8, all-wheel drive, manual box, and arguably the best executed factory wide body in the history of luxury sports sedans.
It is very good. It is very good.
That is something that I've actually, not recently, because reasons, but when I had the Mustang, but as recently as me purchasing the Mustang and trying to figure out what I want for a winter vehicle, I had thought about one of those.
RS4.
Mm-hmm. It's all-wheel drive, and I can put snow tires on it.
No, they are so unreliable.
I understand that. Funny. There's a reason why I'm like at the top of my list is a taco.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the correct answer to this question.
As far as like an interesting car for the winter, like I wouldn't exclusively use it in the winter because that thing would be way too much fun to not. Right? But like that's a car I've always wanted, is one of those. But
yes,
for all of those reasons,
because they are awesome.
To be honest, the first 2 cars, no idea they were rare. None. That did not factor in.
They are.
They
are. I mean, the SS is not crazy rare, but it's rare enough to be interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. So Audi RS4, rare enough again, also to be interesting. Let's see. Mustang, the one that just came out. Mustang GTD.
Um, See that I think that falls into a rarity by price kind of a thing. In that, like, why are Koenigsegg's rare? Because they cost over $1 million, right? They're
Yeah.
handmade. Like they're
Also, also because it's a homologated race car. That's my argument for the Mustang GTD. Like, it's still like,
it's not
okay, they're gonna make 2,000 of them. Cool. There's like a numbers aspect to it, but like, it's a homologated freaking race car. Like, that's the cool factor
okay.
there.
Okay, you've said this for 2 weeks in a row, and it ends here. It's not a homologation special because there is no homologation
It
rules
is.
required. Like it
No,
didn't have to
it's
be
not.
built in
It's
that spec to meet the rules for right.
correct.
It's not like Ford being forced to make I think 500 RS 200s or RS 2000s to be legal to go
200.
rally racing. It's not like that. Ford already makes enough
No.
Mustangs to be legal for GT3.
So, street legal race car then.
Right. So here's why. Like again, if I had all the money in the world, would I be interested? Yes. Would I be more interested in a? Let me put it this way: at $300,000, those things for the first 10 years are going to nosedive, but in 10 years, they're going to be worth double it. Mark my words. You saw it here first. It's just going to happen.
Sure.
Would I want one? Yes. It's a pinnacle of Mustang. I'm obviously a Mustang fan.
Right.
Rarity has nothing to do with it. The fact that it is legitimately a Mustang that can go kick the Europeans' nose in um, has more appeal to me than anything else. Um,
Yeah.
but weirdly, if you gave me, let's just say, $500,000 and you said go buy a Mustang, um, I would legitimately, no joke, probably get the S550 GT500 over it. For the simple fact is that I like the styling better. It is a very capable car on track, and to me, it just looks so much better. Like so much better. I'm nothing away from the new one, but like that wing placement really, it's like all right. We're making this Mustang race car. It's going to be the pinnacle of American performance. Okay, it's in Canada. Oh, wait a second. Who let the guy who designed the Escort Cosworth come in? No, no. Like that's what that wing reminds me of.
Oh, totally.
And don't get me wrong,
I love the wing. I think it's
I'd love
great.
a Kazi. I would love a Kazi. Do not get me wrong, but that like floating whale tail type of wing, I like more conventional wing setups. That's
I,
just
lo-
me.
I so do I, but I like the weirdness and I just like weird
Right.
stuff.
And
So
that's
I'm with it, but I would probably like a normal chassis mounted wing better as opposed to a, you know, B pillar on a coupe mounting point. All right.
yeah.
Moving on from the Mustang GTD to a car that you love, AMG GTR.
I mean, here's the thing about that car. That is on my list of cars that have an automatic that I would absolutely get. So I love the styling of it. I love the way the engine sounds. I love the way the transmission reacts. It's actually like so. Let me put it this way, right? When you pull a paddle and downshift on a paddle shift car, whether it be like a torque converter automatic or a dual clutch, you have an expectation that hey, I did something. The car should immediately do something.
Right.
Whereas even though you pull it and then it downshifts, like there's that pause, it's probably still faster than me downshifting in a manual, right? It's
Yeah.
just the mental thing of I did something, the car better respond. The transmission in that thing is lightning fast and a standard at which I set all paddle shift cars. So it it ticks all of the boxes for me. Um, that is again, you gave me $400,000 or $500,000. Would I get the GTD? No, I'd get a GT500, which again is an automatic. I'd get that, and then I'd have probably whatever's left over as money to do my 510 build.
I mean, I I, I can't really argue with you there because yes, I mean, I mean, it's hard to generalize like okay, well I'm gonna buy this AMG GTR, but like with that money you could build like three cars. So
Right. Like
yeah, it's tough. It's like it's a tough
it's
ask.
a tough ask, but that's one of the cars that I'd be willing to spend the money on because
Right.
it is one of my favorite cars. Um,
Sure.
you know,
But you could have three other cars that
right. I
could
mean, let me put
also
it to you
be
this
one of
way:
your favorites, if not
if
three
I
of your
only had
favorites.
enough money for that car, or do a dream build, or do a build and a truck, like I'm taking those other options first because
Sure.
that interests me more. Um,
Yeah.
but uh, that is that car huge. That was one of the most impressive because they don't make an absolute shit ton of horsepower, but man, was that thing
No, they
crazy!
don't.
It's that car uh, was very reminiscent on track of Porsches, specifically like a GT3.
Yes.
Not a ton of power, but man, like just the speeds you could carry was so impressive for a street car.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. All right. Let's go to one we mentioned earlier, Ford RS 200.
No. And like the reasons I like the other cars, rarity has nothing to do with it. I love homologation specials. Like the 80s were the golden age for homologation. I just never dug the styling. Mid engine rally special
Mhm.
cars, mid engine cars designed for rally, the proportions just look weird to me. I respect the hell out of the engineering, even though the RS had minimal success in rally. But it's like for example, the Stratos is another example of
Yeah.
amazing car, amazing pedigree, amazing history on well in racing. Just the proportions look weird to me. So like again, it's not that it's rare or expensive. It's just it doesn't vibe with me aesthetically.
Gotcha. Mustang GT 350.
I mean,
Because I without the GTD in there, I had to go with another rare Mustang, just because I know you're a Mustang guy. It's rare enough, but it also has performance and racing pedigree. So I wanted to throw that in there as part of this conversation because I know you like Shelby's, and I know that
I
it's probably the same to me for you without answering for you. It's probably the same argument of like the rarity doesn't get you. It's more about the performance, but the rarity is a cool aspect of it.
so there's a couple things with that. So if you would ask me if I would what my favorite Mustang of all time was the day after we went to Pocono and drove the 350,
It would be
it would
that.
have been that. Um,
Yeah.
and they're relatively obtainable now. Like you could get a pre-owned one for about the same price as a Mach 1.
Yeah.
Um,
100%.
the rarity and the thing that makes that car interesting is also one of the things where I'm like, it was kind of an unnecessary flex, and that is the engine. Now, did they race the S550 GT350? Yes, they did. It was a GT4 car.
Keep talking. I will be right back.
Did that race car race with the engine that makes the GT350 special? No, it did not. It did not race with the flat plane V8 that came in the street car. Mostly because the street, like, so here's a quick history on the flat plane crank V8. Flat plane crank V8s are great because you have order. So left bank, right bank, left bank, right bank, left bank, right bank, right? That's how it fires. In a cross plane, it's left bank, right bank, left bank, right bank, right bank. Like that's kind of the firing order. And that's what gives a cross plane V8 kind of that kind of burble. Uh, and they with the so, but you'll notice that the 350's V8 does not sound like any other flat plane V8. Like it doesn't sound like a Ferrari V8. And like a lot of people were like, "Oh, it's the displacement." Well, if it's the displacement, the new Z06 V8 should have a growl to it instead of a howl, which it has. Um, so they had to change the firing order. It was still even pulses per side of the cylinder bank, so left, right, left, right. But in doing so, they had to make some other compromises, and they had to add weight back to the crankshaft, so that the crankshaft is actually only 5 pounds lighter than the Coyote's crankshaft on which this engine is based on. I've said it more than enough. Like I think the Voodoo is a really cool way of sitting here and saying, "Hey, we're Ford. When we talk performance, we know what the heck we're talking about." But I don't think it was required. Um, Here's the thing: I would. It's hard for me because like the 500 is such a great car, but it's also suffers from the same problem my Mustang suffers from: too much power for the street. As like my third or fourth fun car, probably as like you can only have this as a fun car. I mean, I shoot, it'd probably be worth it just to get something that isn't an MT82 transmission, or a rebuilt one, like in mine for that case. So it goes. I mean, honestly, lately I've been kind of vibing with the Mach ones. I kind of dig them a lot. Uh, so for the sake of look, any S550 Mustang apart from the EcoBoost is an impressive piece of kit, and I would absolutely grab any of them. I mean, the facelifted ones look like a catfish, so I'm like, maybe not. But the Mach 1, great looking car. The GT500, best looking Mustang ever made. Uh, but I don't know. The 350 is just not something on my radar that I've thought about a lot recently. Um, Real quick, while we wait for Greg, uh, Antoine goes, the CT4V Blackwing and the CT5V Blackwing are probably the only two cars with a manual transmission where you can shift faster than an automatic because they have no lift shift feature to keep whip with the automatic or exceed it. No other cars with manuals can nor will do that. Um, from factory, I agree with you. Um, on the upshifts, maybe, but the downshifts, the automatics are going to be faster. Uh, and little known fact, manuals are geared to lose acceleration tests to their automatic cousins, just because they're geared a certain way. First and second gear in a lot of manual cars for like enthusiast driving are pretty tall. Um, I don't know. The that's one of the complaints with, to go back to the GT350, is that second gear. I forget how fast it's like 70 or 80 miles an hour in second gear. So that means you can enjoy that 8,200 RPM redline exactly once, um, before you're doing go to jail speeds on the road. So, um, but most of the time, manuals are geared taller than their automatic brethren. Automatics now have more gears. So a lot of times, all things being equal, the automatic would still accelerate a little quicker. But no lift shift is an awesome feature. It's a very cool feature. It's something that we are actually looking into putting into my car, just because of how beefy the transmission is and how it's sort of set up for it. You just have to install an ignition cut and a bunch of other little stuff there. Uh, Antoine wants Greg to ask me about the Celine version of the Mustang. Are you talking Celines in general, or like is there an S550 Celine? S550. Oh yeah, look at that. Um, I'll tell you what. So let's do this. Open. That's an S50. All right, so desktop width. There we go. I actually really dig that front bumper. Um, Actually, I really dig that front bumper a lot. Um, 800 horsepower, S302 Black Label Mustang.
Hello.
Hi, what's up? I was asked if I would take the Saleen version of my Mustang. Maybe.
With the Celine S550?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I don't like the hood. I'll say that right up front. Um, but I do kind of dig some of the styling, and then I do actually kind of like that front bumper a lot. Um, would I take it over my car? It's hard to say. I don't know what the pricing is, but I got to imagine being small volume tuner, it's going to be pretty pricey. Like that front bumper looks really good to me. If I could get the front bumper, we might be talking about something. But
I absolutely hate the way that looks, by the way.
well, you were born without taste. I'm not talking about the whole thing.
I was born with excellent
So
taste.
here's the thing:
I drive a Volvo.
from the hood line up, that hood looks like it's a modified Camaro hood.
Yeah, I don't like anything about that front end other than the headlights, which look cool.
But probably not. Just because I feel like pricing wise, you could probably get into a Shelby, and I would put the Shelby ahead of this. So that's that. Yeah, and then yeah, I mean, let me put it this way: Saleen, I loved Saleen back in the day, with like the SN95s and like basically everything pre S550. If that makes sense. I do like the side skirts too. But at any rate, Greg, next question.
Next car,
Yeah.
Alfa Romeo 4C.
Uh, Probably not.
What am I looking at, by the way? I'm looking at Infinity Us.
I forgot to hit. I forgot to hit the transition button.
Nice.
Probably.
It's just a lot of.
Let me put it this way. I would say no, and I know it's carbon fiber. I know it actually looks really, really good. Meets a lot of the criteria. Um, I don't remember off the top of my head what the exact displacement on the engine is, but it's less than 2 liters,
tiny.
and it's a 4-cylinder.
I think it's a 1.8.
And to justify the expense of that car, it really needs an engine that's a little more exciting. It's a great car.
I get
It's
that.
a great car. It's a phenomenally fun car to drive. It's a head turner. It's great in so many ways. It's just unfortunately, like when you have that type of car, the engine just isn't interesting enough to me. Now, if they got like say like let's just say hypothetically it came with a, because what do those cars make horsepower wise? A little under 3,
Two.
or is it like under 250?
It's under 250. It's like 220 something or 230. I don't say 230 something, maybe 240 something. But having driven it, the power means nothing because it weighs nothing. It's just like a Lotus in that respect.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. Like it doesn't need that, it
ridiculously
doesn't
fun.
need a shit ton of power. But if that car had, so like not for nothing, I know they would never put it in it just because of how old the engine is. But if that car came with a Beams Toyota 4-cylinder, I think 4A, that came in the Alexis or the Altezza RS200 over in Japan, that could easily make 250 horsepower and is arguably the best sounding 4-cylinder of all time. Now we're talking. But the engine it has in it, the sounds it makes, just it's off-putting. It doesn't sound special, even
Yeah,
though you're sitting in a special place.
I get it. I get it. I would disagree with you just based on having driven it, but I understand your point.
I've driven them. I've driven one.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
Did you
I had
drive?
a
Did
couple
you drive the
times at
one we
test
had
days.
as a?
Not the loaner, but
Oh, okay. You had it going to test
I
days.
did test days. I had
Oh,
about
okay.
45 minutes with it, and I had it on the track the next day. So
Gotcha. I didn't realize
I
that.
was one of the only people who had it on track. There was a theme
Nice.
that one year, like that
Yeah.
the one jet
You
the
you
F the
drove something and then it broke like the next two or three people or something.
I had nothing to do with that. And I remember with the Jag there.
No, but it was just like randomly like I remember the Jag with the manual was one of the ones too. I because I drove it, I brought it back in, and I was like, you need to take this off. It's not even shifting
And the
anymore.
best part about that was you drove it, and they're like, Chad, can you drive it just to confirm? Like, yeah,
Yeah,
that
and I was
was
like,
so great.
motherfuckers, really? Seriously?
Oh, it was
And then you
great.
went out and you're just like, yeah, he's correct. And I'm like, I just told you this, and I have a manual as a daily. Shut up.
Well, back then,
Well, back then,
regardless of,
but still, I'm
uh,
like, really? Come on, dickheads.
yeah.
Whatever.
And then
Um,
Anthony, you'll be hearing from my lawyers about your libelous slander.
all right, next car. Let's see. I think we covered it, but ZR1.
Uh, which
C7.
no, I'd significantly rather C6Z06. 10 out of
What
10
about a
though.
C4 ZR1?
No, hate the C4.
No.
Love the
Okay.
engine,
It's
hate
just
the
to
C4.
me that's a more interesting car than the
It
C7 ZR1 just because it's like because it's the one that no one wants, but it's a ZR1 and the way that that thing sounds at like full chat is just nuts.
Yeah, so I forget what he ended up getting for it, but Demo Ranch sold his ZR1 that he had actually the motor was like built and stuff and like it sounded
Yeah.
great, it looked great. I never could get behind the C4 styling. Like it just
Yeah, I get it.
like a lot of cars from that
C4
era,
is a polarizing vet.
in my mind it goes C6, C4 or I'm sorry, C6, C7, C4 for the ZR1s.
Yeah.
Um but just because like the C6 Z06 is the last big displacement vet. Um,
Right.
something there's something very evocative about having a 427 in a Corvette. Like that just meshes. It's like a 426 Hemi in a Charger or a Challenger or something like that. Like it's like the perfect engine for the nameplate.
Right. Um sorry, a little work came in, so
And
I'm on
just
my second
this is
computer
kind
over
of
here.
skewed off of rarity, but like none of the decisions it has anything to do with how rare the car is. Like it
Right.
has nothing to, but I like
Yeah.
this game and I think we'll do it for you next week.
Yeah, I'm down with that.
Oh, and I broke my pen.
Okay, I have three cars left and then we're done.
Okay.
Um since we just got it in the States a couple of years ago, the newer Audi RS6.
Cool car. Love a fast wagon. Want it to be extremely successful because I'd like to see I'd like to see wagons as a whole make a comeback. Not for me. And it's really for that. I would so rather the RS6 we didn't get with the turbocharged 10 cylinder.
I mean, yes, same. But we don't have that.
Right. And this, it's not. Don't get me wrong. It's not. It's way more capable than that car ever was.
Yeah, correct.
But I don't know. Something about that, the current Audi styling is a little off putting for me. And
Yeah.
not for nothing, the appeal of a fast wagon to me is like all the fun of a sedan. So if I'm looking at a fast sedan, I want a manual box. And
Yeah.
no manual kind of, I would, let me, I know no,
Oh, fun fact, we don't get an RS6 sedan. We only have the new
which I think is
Avant.
awesome. And don't get me wrong, for that car with that kind of power levels, you probably should have an automatic. Anything over 600
Sure.
horsepower for the average. I'm not talking about any of our esteemed viewers. But for the average consumer, if you're over 600 horsepower, really, if you're, I would even say 500, but if you're over 600
Yeah.
horsepower, definitely the car should have a very sporty automatic.
Yeah, I agree with that because
Because
at that point it's more just a performance thing than a feel thing.
it's not even about that. It's more a safety thing for me because like people are spinning at 400
True.
horsepower, so
Yeah, that's a good
you
point.
add 50% to that. You add another 200 horsepower to that, and to the uninitiated, you know, 600 horsepower and a clutch pedal can get out of control pretty easily. So that's kind of where that comes from. Next patient.
So two left. I will leave the weirdest one for last, but Volvo V70R.
Cool car. I loved when I was driving yours. I loved driving it around, and you could tell the people who were like, "Huh, that's an interesting sound coming from a car that should be fat." And then you drive by, and like it's almost like their head, like their brain isn't letting them turn to watch it because they can't
Yeah.
put the sound to the car.
Yes.
I thought it
That's
was
partially why I love this thing too. It's the same reactions. You're just like, oh, that's a cool sound. That's making pops and bangs. What in the holy shit? That's a Volvo? Why is that making that? That's weird.
so like I really love that. The sound that car is so unique. I love the fact that like it you get the Mini V10, you get the Audi Quattro S2 rally car, Pikes Peak thing like going. Um, Genuinely enjoyed my time with that car. Would it be first? Honestly, if we were to blow up, the first challenge series I would want to do is an early mid 2000s wagon off
Oh, yes.
and
Also phrasing.
whacking off.
Wagon off.
Um, but
I love a good wagon off.
but and like even as fun as the rules would be, um, even as fun as like the rules could be, you could start with any wagon, but Greg can't do a Volvo because I want the V70R. Um,
Oh, I know which one I would do.
if I'm honest, I would my entry to that would be a Sport Cross, uh, IS 300.
That's a good one.
Um, just
That's a good one.
because you so very rare like, and not for nothing, they make a you would have to modify for the sedan, but they make a very tasteful wide body for that. And
Hmm.
like again, it's one of those things where like you hit like the 2J is pretty recognizable, right? You pull up to a car meet like revving it, like, oh, there's another dipshit in a 2J. I wonder what he swapped it
Yeah.
into, or here comes a Supra or an IS 300 or
Yeah.
blah blah blah, and
Yeah.
then wagon. Um, like I respect the hell out of the fast Volvo wagons. Believe it or not, the one I would want to play with the most first would probably be like a V50 if I could find a manual or a manual swap it easily. I don't know
Well,
why.
it's on the same platform your C30 was, so that doesn't surprise me.
It's not platform specific. That just vibes with me. Or like I
They're
said,
cool.
or like
They're
I
cool.
said, get an old like 240 and put that I forget the designer, but Ashthorpe, the wide body box flare kit he did on that. Put that on a 240. That would
Yeah,
be interesting.
that'd be sweet.
But yeah, it's like so again for the Volvoists in the chat. This is going to infuriate you. So I encourage you to light your pitchforks and sharpen your fires. Um, the spaceball shifter annoys me.
I mean, I don't think that's that outlandish. When I first got my car, I hated it
Um,
because
it makes the
it's
shifting experience
really
feel.
close.
It makes the shifting experience feel clunky. From my
It's
opinion.
not the smoothest transmission. No. It's a
So like
good transmission. It's made by
like
Borg Warner, so it's definitely solid. But I agree with you. It's not the best, and it's not notchy, but it feels notchy, which is weird to say. And it's not smooth. I don't know. It's a good transmission when it is kept up properly and it feels smooth. My car did not have a smooth M66 transmission.
and I'll say this again. If I were to get back into Volvo and have sort of a big money build project similar to the Mustang, I would love to take that white block and put it in the back of a uh, second generation MR2.
That would be very cool.
That my interest in Volvos is strictly their engines. Well, not strictly, but like I think it'd
Yeah,
be hysterical to put that a white block in an MR2 or a white block in an NA Miata or something like that, just because of that sound.
or an old MGB.
An old MGB, it's all that
That'd be
sort of stuff.
sweet.
Yeah,
Yeah. All right. Last car of the list. M3 CSL of any generation.
pass,
I knew that would be the answer. But
pass.
just because they're rare,
They're
but
rare,
they're
but it
also
also
like
so.
they're
What
so
was
the
the
reason
last?
why I picked
I
that
think the
one is
E40.
it's just a weird M3 because the CSL is
What's that, sir? You want
almost
cardboard in your
unnecessary.
trunk as your trunk liner?
What? Wait, what's that?
What's that, sir? Would you like a trunk, the bottom of your trunk to be made out of cardboard? Because we have you
Well,
covered.
right, right. That's why I picked it. It's just because it's rare, but it's also performance, but it's weird because it's supposed to be like the lightweight and performance M3, and it's like, but the M3s are already performance variations of normal cars. And they also make more hardcore versions of the M3. The CSL, well, it's like so revered in the M3 community, it's just a weird
Well,
version to me, and that's why I wanted to add it
the
to the list and
CSL,
then leave it last
peak
because it's just
CSL was
strange.
E46 because like the if you want to see an E46 M3 owner have like literally a pants ruining moment, show him a CSL intake for the E46.
Yeah,
They're like that's the go-to
yeah,
intake. They're no joke. They when I was looking, they were trading between $1,000 and $1,500
just for the intake.
just for the intake.
That's
So
crazy.
here's my problem with the CSL. And Anthony said, yes, my BMW ruined BMWs for me. But I think the crux of
Correct.
the issue for the E46 M3, you get one that's been well maintained, baby, looked after. I've said this multiple times. That driving experience is unlike any other, and it's been one I've been trying to. I have not been able to replicate. Your positioning in comparison to the rear wheels, with the power it had, with the delivery, with all that stuff, is perfection. Like just being the. I knew what every tire. Well, I didn't necessarily know, but it felt like I knew what every single tire was doing. So when that thing worked, it was the most fun car to take out on a back road that I've ever driven. It just worked so unbelievably infrequently that I was just soured to the brand. And the biggest problem with that is that it was ahead of its time. The M that engine, the S6 or S54, 5 to 6 years later, when you had more modern electronics, more modern wave, more modern variable valve, all this other stuff, would have been almost perfection. But at that time, putting individual throttle bodies on the car with that rev, with that sort of tolerance, with that amount of NA horsepower, right? Keep in mind, the RB26 had individual throttle bodies on a turbocharged car, which is, but it was only making 276 or at most 400 turbocharged out of the factory horsepower. The S54 made 330 something NA.
Yeah.
That is a ton of NA horsepower for the early 2000s out of 3.2 liters. That wasn't
Still is, by the way.
100%. So, like, that was as close to a race engine as you were going to get, and it suffered from inherent. It From what I understand, those things survived right up until the warranty ran out. And then they spun every single bearing they could find. But like there were little
Yeah.
things, right? Like you had to have I forget what they were, but it literally had a shim kit for like I think not the valves obviously, but I forget what it was like for like the I think it was for like the intakes. And part of your like service, your regularly interval service, was them getting in there with a feeler gauge and adding these shims in to keep clearances. I forget what it was. I want to say it was intake. But like that should tell you everything you need to know about that engine and its ability to be long lived.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
the CSL was more. So no thank you.
Right. Yeah. Good. And therefore, and this ends the list for this week. So now next week, you need to come up with a list for me.
Oh, the list is over. I thought you said you had one more oddball or
No. Oh, so the last thing I had was an era of cars. That was the last car.
okay.
The era would be like 60s, 70s era muscle cars. Um are there any sort of in that era that the rarity speaks more to you than performance? Because they all were about one thing: big engine, go fast, straight line, sound cool.
So
Are there any rare versions of those that like the rarity sort of speaks more to you? Because they're not really like none of those are really handling cars.
no.
So is
So
it more? Are some of them because they're older more about the rarity to you than the performance?
well, I always thought the Aero Mopars were cool. The Superbird and the Daytona,
Sure.
mostly because it was just the absurdity of them, and they were inherent. Those were homologation cars, so there weren't a lot of them. Um, but it goes for like every generation, right? Like I want the GT 500. It's the most expensive, it's the rarest, and it's the most high performance Mustang they made up until this GTD, right? As an
Right.
example, same could be said for the 426 Hemi cars. Same could be said for the 427 Chevy cars. I always thought Copo cars were cool because it was like that era. You could literally just sit here and go and be like, I want that part right there. Oh, you mean the part that's literally sitting on the NASCAR that's going out and racing this weekend? Yes, that. Sure, here you go, sir. Um, you know, uh, again, it's just some of the cars I like, or the cars I like, happen to be rare, but I don't like them because they're rare.
Got
So,
it.
like I
Okay.
said, uh,
Good to know.
the what's it called? The the Hemi, the Hemi Mopars, right? Like, love those, but 440 with the six pack on it was getting very similar performance. Um, the 427 cars, because they were rated at 427 cubic inch, 427 horsepower, even though they were making closer to 500, I thought were always cool. I have a soft spot for any era Corvette, not so much the C4, but almost every other era, just because Dad had a Corvette, and like
Right.
if I was like I let me put it to you this way: there's a Corvette in our area. If the guy said we'll do a even swap, your Mustang for this Corvette, it would be quite a difficult decision. I probably would keep the
Mm,
Mustang, but like because Dad also had a Mustang, but he had I don't want to say a base Mustang because he had the high output 289 in his, but it wasn't like a special Mustang. The Corvette was
right.
the Corvette, and he modified the shit out of it. So instead of a 283, it had a 327 that was board stroked, balanced, blueprinted to around
Yeah.
360 cubic inches.
Okay.
Real quick before we sign off, I just want to get through chat a little bit. Antoine asks, CTSV wagon. Uh, See, I love that it's a Corvette wagon, basically, and not in its simplest form. But the CT that generation of CTSV has aged poorly, in my personal opinion. I thought the styling was
Yeah.
cool in the
They have.
day. Now it's doesn't really hit me. And that being said, I've always liked the ATS better. Again, it goes back
Yeah.
to I
And
like M3 competitors, and I liked them before I hated the M3. So
for me, it's weird to say, like, I'm such a wagon lover, and I love almost every wagon. The CTSV wagon, I would not own. I don't care if it has a V8. I think it's ugly. And the interior is aging really poorly. It's the exterior is still like cool in certain ways. The big, tall, skinny taillights are just cool. But like,
it's a cool vehicle,
I
and
don't
I
know.
love what it
I don't
represents, and I love like it's
I wouldn't have it.
like that. It's just like, man, like
I don't know.
it's and like I said, if let's just say I happen to own one, right? Like someone gives me one or I win one in a cup, I would drive the shit out of that car and defend it to the hilt. But if I had the money, I'd probably go elsewhere. Antoine asks, let me go off
Yeah.
topic for a moment. Why have you been wearing a hoodie in 90 to 100-degree weather all summer long, even if you're inside your house?
Because it's not that hot here in New
Hasn't
Jersey.
been that hot, number one. Number two, my house is.
Yeah, number two.
Who does number two work for?
Like I said, same up here, bro.
Um,
Same up here.
the second thing is that my house only has one zone. So,
Ah, I know that well.
and where the master bedroom is situated is right next to. So we have like almost this. We have basically a 3-story stairwell in my house. It goes up a half. Like so, you walk in the garage, go up a half flight, make a 180, go up a half flight, and you're at the first floor. Or no, I'm sorry, up. You're at the door. Turn, go up another half flight. You're on our first floor. Then again, 180, 180. You're on the second floor, and right above the second floor, in the infinite wisdom of whoever designed the patio homes here, put skylights. And the skylights, and right as you get to the top of the stairs, skylights, nice view of things. Right there is the master bedroom. And so the master bedroom is one of the warmer rooms in the house. And that's the room my mom has. So to keep her comfortable, it gets a little chilly down here.
Also, off topic, skylights are the funniest thing in a house to me ever. It's just like, let's put a roof over our head. But instead of walking outside to look at the sky, let's put a big fucking window there that clouds up within a year.
I mean,
That seems like a really good idea.
yes, but skylights are to a house what a sunroof is to a car.
Oh, I disagree with
I
that.
mean, why do you need to
A
look up?
sunroof for a car is able to be opened and enjoyed. A skylight is just there to let unnecessary light in and heat and be make a roof more inefficient. Skylights and roofs are just so stupid to me. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
It is the most 70s and 80s thing
I
ever
mean,
to me. I don't know.
yeah.
I don't
I get
I'm
if you
out.
have like uh I mean, for me they just don't make a lot of sense. I mean, granted these houses were built in the 80s and stuff. And there's one
Right,
contractor who's
exactly.
literally just built a business on deleting them in a lot of people's houses. It's something I'd like to
Yeah.
do. I just there's other things here.
I mean, you can delete them easy with a big piece of cardboard.
Well, we usually put the half-inch uh, plate insulation
No, okay.
up in it. But
That works too. That's good.
the biggest problem with that is that it was getting so hot up there that it was starting to rapidly deteriorate some of the seals. So
Oh, yeah,
we
okay.
had that fixed. So it's like a double-edged sword. It's something I would want to delete if this was a long-term. If this house was my long-term plan, it would be fixed tomorrow. I don't know how long I'm going to be
Sure.
here. That's the simple thing there.
Right. Right.
But to answer your question, Antoine, because my mother lives with me, I try to keep her comfort above mine. Anthony goes, the Spaceball is neat, but also incredibly weird, and I get why you're not a fan of it. Woohoo! Uh, my Volvo with a manual transmission is getting a Mustang transmission swap from Doug. Ah, so you're a fan of American transmission swaps, but not American. I'm just kidding. It was an LS joke that was going to be tired and tortured and wasn't going to get there. Um, Anthony goes, the split window Corvette. Yep, the split window Corvette is for everyone, even though it's the most dangerous.
Yep. It's the most dangerous, but it is the
And
best.
Doug goes, L88 Vet would be the one I'd probably want, partly in due to rarities. So here's the thing rarity, oftentimes, especially if you're talking about desirable vehicles, rarity equals dollars. And if you're buying a car as an investment, rarity plays a part of it. It's part of uh, Daily Driven Exotics business strategy, in fact, because they
Hmm.
finance a lot of their cars, if not all of their cars. And their cars appreciate because rarity, because Lambo doesn't make a lot of cars, and then when Lambo makes a limited run of cars, they tend to be the ones that everybody wants. So
Yeah,
like,
sure.
I get it from that sense. We're not on a Daily Driven Exotics level, so I can't. I haven't even thought that
Yet.
way, and I don't look at cars like investments at all. I feel cars should be driven, and I don't want to feel like if I'm now driving my car, I'm somehow devaluing the business or what have you. So like that's also part of it for me. But like I said, if we were ever at a size to where like we could start thinking about cars like this, yeah, probably our first supercar purchase would be a car that would be a safe bet to appreciate.
Yeah, for sure.
And we come back to the 1957 Rambler Rebel. All right. Um,
All right.
but it's almost 11. And
Oh, holy crap. Look at that.
I think that's a good spot to call it for the evening.
Yep, agree.
We will have a list for Greg. Squad, feel free to throw suggestions up there. Um, or actually, maybe we'll have Squad come up with a list, submit them to Doug for approval, and then 2 weeks from now, we do this with the shift squads uh,
Oh, yeah, I
suggestions.
like that. So we'll do Chad's list, and then we'll do the shift squad's list.
Yes.
I like it.
Um,
Big fan.
yeah. So, Doug, Steve, everyone who donated, thank you so much. To everyone else, thank you so much for watching. Your continued support, all our supporters, just people who watch, all that sort of stuff. Couldn't do it without you guys. So we appreciate you an
Yeah.
absolute metric shit ton. But I've been Chad. That's the Gregson. And we'll catch you next week. Oh, don't turn our stream off yet. Friday, somewhere between around 9ish, I will be starting a charity stream. I will give you more details, guys. But I have a charity stream for all of September. Starts on Friday. Shift Squad, I'll post something. Check it out on Friday if you can. It's for
Yes, please tune in to Chad.
it's if for nothing else, it's for a really really good cause. So